Well, welcome to this special episode of the Casual Shooters Podcast with my guest today, Riley Bowman. How you doing, Riley?
Very well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for throwing out the idea.
Yeah. I pinged you and it's like, hey man, like we get the matchbook for Carry Optics Nationals, let's do like a Carry Optics preview.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. Now, I was thinking skipping all between the first 25 pages are basically all ads and some information stuff. So my
Right.
thought was we'd go from page 1, which is the cover, to page 26, which is the stages, all listed out though.
Right.
And because there were a couple of things that stood out to me. The first thing I looked for was Virginia count, and I saw there are two of them.
Yep.
And then the
Yep. I,
next thing I
I saw
looked
the
at,
same thing.
okay. And my next thought was how many of those are 24 rounds? And wouldn't you know it, there's a Virginia count 24, or Virginia 24 round count stage. But so my thought was, okay, those people with the magazines that can actually take 24 rounds would have an advantage. Thinking like the classifier they had at Carry Optics Nationals, where it was the 24 round stage. But I guess it's actually a mandatory reload, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's stage 5, and it's actually two different strings, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's I mean, it's a very simple standards type stage.
Mm-hmm.
Three targets, 10 yards and 15 yards away, and yeah,
Open
shoot each of those
targets too. Yeah.
targets. Yeah, shoot each of those targets 2 times. Mandatory reload. Shoot them again, 2 rounds each, strong hand only, and then repeat it again from the 10-yard line. 2 rounds each, freestyle, mandatory reload. 2 rounds each, weak hand only. So I mean, nothing terribly inventive to that one, but
No.
it's okay. I I kind of saw that one. I was like, that stage is kind of meh in my opinion. But at the same time, I'm totally okay and on board with having standards type stages to mix it up, even at a nationals level event, as long as don't overdo it. But yeah, so yeah, that
Okay.
is one of the Virginia count stages for sure.
Yeah. Now, the next thing I did was I calculated the total number of rounds from this
Hmm.
page. I got 444.
Hmm.
So for you, how many total rounds of ammunition are you bringing, knowing that you need a minimum of 444?
Yeah, so my approach with such things is I try to bring at least 50% more. And so running the numbers on that, it puts me really close to 700. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and I would certainly feel comfortable. Like that's plenty of rounds. So then it just comes down to, well, how much practice do I want to do while I'm at the match? And this appears to be a match in a range location that is going to have a truly available practice bay that's not, unavailable until 9 a.m. and things like that, like the Talladega range. And so I might be inclined to do a little bit more practice at this particular match. And then we also have things like the Bill Drill Challenge that they're repeating again from last year with Henning Group involved, and now Colt's a sponsor of that, and Shooting USA is doing coverage of that and sponsoring it as well. And so I'll probably want to take some attempts at the Bill Drill Challenge. I mean, I did pretty well with that last year, and so I'm probably gonna honestly, I'm probably gonna come out with about a case of ammo, about 1,000 rounds, which is probably way over what I need. But I'm also likely driving to the match, and so I'm not.
Okay.
I could ship it if, and that's usually what I do when I'm flying into a major match. Is I'll usually ship ammo, as opposed to trying to get it into my checked baggage. Although I've done it that way as well. In this case, I'm likely driving because I'm actually going to on the return trip, just make a stop or two and do some business on the way home. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah,
Taking a little bit of an extended trip on the way home then.
I'll extend it
Okay.
by about a day. I got a stop in Indiana that I'm going to make that I just got confirmed this morning with a guy. So doing some business in Indiana, and there might be one other place I stop on the way back after Indiana, back to Colorado. So,
Okay.
yep.
So now, when you got this email, what was the first thing you were checking in the
Uh,
matchbook?
yeah. So I'm very similar to you in that I go right to this page, the one that you're on right now, and
Okay.
look at the different zones, look at the round counts, um, and then I start like you just did, like, okay, so what's different about these or unique? Okay, we got two Virginia count stages. Okay, all right, and I'm okay with that as well. I mean, Virginia
Yeah.
count's not my favorite thing in the world because I'm an American and I like blasting all the things all the time, but I'm also okay with the concept of having something a little different occasionally. And so two stages of Virginia count, okay, no big deal there. Which ones are those? And I did the exact same thing. I was like, is there one of these that's gonna push me to 24 rounds in a mag? Nope. Okay, don't have to worry about that because I don't have a setup currently where I can actually, well, if I could start loaded, I can have 23 because my gun right now, the way things are set up with my mags, are 23 plus one. So, so I looked at that, found that was a non-issue. Then the next thing I started looking at were things like I'll look at if there's like what kind of stages there are, as far as like if they're kind of standard stages where you have the mandatory reloads, one-handed shooting. So in that, I found that we've got, I think it's 3 stages that have mandatory reloads. I was actually in the middle of going through and identifying exactly which ones those were. We know the stage 5, the one we just talked about. That's the Virginia count with the 2 strings of fire. I believe. Let's see. What was the other ones? Let's see if I can find them real quick. I go through. So what I do, the next thing I basically do, um, David, is I go through and I underline or circle keywords like unloaded start or tabled start or an unconventional hand start position, just so I'm aware of those things ahead of time. Um, I don't know how much of that will factor into my pre-match prep because I'm generally practicing different hand start positions regardless. But we got 3 stages where we have typically a hands or wrists above shoulder start. I think there's actually 2 of those. One stage that is a hands-on mark or hands-on marks start. You got 3 stages of mandatory reloads, so I'm looking at that stuff, and so I'm underlining and circling some of those key words so that as I'm reviewing those stages, I don't miss that stuff. Um, I'm not finding quickly what the other mandatory reload ones are, but here's one. Stage 17, another standard stage. Oh, yep, this is the other Virginia count stage. It looks kind of similar to that 22, was it 22-04 or '05 classifier? Can't remember the name of
Right.
it.
I
4
don't
targets,
either.
one's a stack. You basically shoot
Yes.
4 rounds on one target, 4 rounds on another target, perform a mandatory reload, and do the same thing. This is almost the exact same setup as
That's
that
what I thought it
22.
was initially.
Yeah, yeah. Except in this case, it's using IPSC targets with hardcover instead of, in the case of that 22 series classifier from last year, where you had a no-shoot target mixed into the stack in the middle. Um, but yeah, it's wrists above respective shoulders, facing downrange, mandatory reload, but there is one other major difference between that previous classifier and this, which looks like it could be a classifier. Um, After your reload, you still have to engage 2 more targets with 4 rounds each, and then that is done strong hand only. So that'll be kind of an interesting mix on that. Um, and then I identify stages that have one-handed shooting. There's 2 of those. We just covered the stage 17 here. Oh, and here's the other mandatory reload stage, stage 18, which has got a look, kind of a wall or barrier. It's not right up against the shooting area based on the diagram, but you got an array
Mm.
on the left and an array on the right, and each
Yeah.
array is 4 targets each. couple of stacks, couple of tuxedo targets. So you shoot either array. It says either T1, T4, or T5 to T8. Do a mandatory reload and engage the other side, and it doesn't matter. It's freestyle, so you can go either side and shoot freestyle the whole time. But you do have a mandatory reload between the arrays, and that's a wrist above shoulders start as well. So
Right.
that's kind of stuff I look for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went ahead and put that one up on the screen because the interesting thing about that is it's the same exact set of targets, just rearranged on the other side.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting, right? And I appreciate stuff like this where on the left side array, it looks like, we obviously know not to trust exactly the stage diagrams and layouts and things like
Right.
that. But it's apparent that, part of the challenge here will be that you have a tuxedo target on the left side array that's relatively close, but then on the right side, it's going to be probably the furthest away one or close to it, right? And so that'll
Yeah.
add a additional level of difficulty or complexity. So I appreciate stage design like that. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Virginia count stuff or standards type stages, but I don't have a problem with them as long as we don't end up with too many of them. Now there is a fair number of kind of standards like stages at this match. But I also appreciate that there's still a pretty good mix, and there's a bunch of also really good looking stages as well. With really, nice. Like there's a couple of 32 round count stages. That's stage 19 and 13 or 32 round count. I did an average round count for the whole match is 22.2 rounds. So I
Okay.
think that's a pretty good place to be.
I
You
would
got
agree. Yeah.
you got a couple of 12 round stages, a couple 16 round stages, a 13, a 14, and then everything else is basically 24 to 32 rounds.
Yeah, I think when I did my initial tabulations, yeah, you had 8 stages between 25 and 32 rounds, 8 stages between 16 and 24 rounds, and then 4 stages 0 to 15 rounds. So,
Yep.
yeah, not bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I like it. I mean, I think it's pretty well balanced in that regard.
yeah, I agree. And the other thing about, let me go back to this one real quick, was there were only there were only 3 stages that were 30 or more rounds.
Hmm.
So that means the other 5 of those 25 to 32 were really between 25 and 29 rounds. So interestingly enough, it's just a way to make you, now you've got to think, okay, 5 of those big stages, I know I need to do at least one mag change. So, you
Hmm.
start thinking of little things like that as you said, we know that the stages are not going to look the same when you get there. They will be different. But
Yep.
at least you know what the round count's going to be, and you can start getting an idea of what things you need to just brush up on, like the 2 table starts. 2 table starts isn't enough for you to win the match. You could lose the match,
Right.
but at least, okay, I'll do a little bit of practicing, maybe even just the night before, just to get, again, comfortable with it. So the next day when I start, it's like, okay, everything's good.
Yeah. I try not to overthink those unconventional type starts. I practice them, but not. Mm, how if I'm being honest, I've never practiced that stuff to like at a high volume, if you will. I practice it periodically,
Yeah.
maybe usually as a result of, hey, I've got a major coming up, and almost always at majors we're going to see something like that, at least one or two. Like again, we've got 2 table starts, like you pointed out, one of those being unloaded. I didn't see, now here's this is interesting of note. So I don't think magnets or that kind of thing are going to be a factor at this match. I didn't see anything that stated that you had to start with all loading
Right. You're
magazines
not
on a
staging your
table.
mags.
Yeah, so it to me looks like you're. And now, granted, we've certainly have seen matches, and including nationals matches, where we get the match book and we get there, and they've changed something like that. So it doesn't mean that that won't happen. But as the stage diagrams and descriptions currently exist, there's nothing where you're going to be picking up mags off of a table or having to stage them all on tables or barrels. So probably a good thing to, again, kind of have that feather in your cap, so to speak, as far as like, don't overlook that. That could always change. But as of right now, a magnet probably isn't, a huge factor. I had my magnet actually fell off my belt. The screw attachment broke, and I haven't replaced it for a couple of months now. And I was thinking maybe I should get that, fixed before nationals in case that's a factor. And as of right now, it's not. But I'm going to probably go ahead and get it put back on just in case if they change something on us and I have to, stow a magazine on the start.
Well, and I've found that I just put my first magazine that I'm going to, when I load and make ready, that's my magazine. I just put it on the magnet so it's convenient to get to.
Sure.
Because the
Yeah.
only other time I use it is on a stage start where I'm having to stage
Pickup,
mags.
Yeah. It is nice to have that magazine from a loading, perspective, or just like getting ready for a stage, or even when I get done shooting, just to stow it away quickly. But I'll get mine repaired here at some point.
Now,
the other thing I'm not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the other thing I'm not really seeing, and again, we can't trust stage diagrams too much in the matchbook, but not seeing anything that appears to be even like a low port. Now, again, we've certainly seen where stage diagram looks one way, and you get there, it's like, oh, we have a low port now. It's like, okay, cool. So I would not be surprised to see a low port or two added. But as of right now, as far as I can gather, there's not anything that seems to be indicating a low port position.
I think I may cut this out of the video so they don't get any ideas. I don't want to hear them hear there are no low ports and then they add it.
Well, I added the disclaimer. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
Right.
But like I'm thinking back to last year's Care Optics Nationals and the diagrams, like even from the diagram, we knew there was going to be some kind of like Cooper-like tunnel, like we had on what was a stage 22. Stuff like that we saw in the diagrams and we saw it in the match.
Right.
This one's not showing anything like that. That again could change. We've certainly seen.
Right. But that would be a drastic change, though. That would be a complete change to the stage to design. But
to have a low port added somewhere.
Oh well, no, I mean like a Cooper tunnel. Something like that would be a big change. A low port, yeah, I agree. That's simple. So
yeah.
The other thing that kind of struck me, Riley, was I noticed it, but Steve Anderson actually put a post out today about it. How many open targets there are? There are a lot of open targets. Now that could change too, but listing them out, he actually listed them out, and it's like 137 open targets compared to 43 partials.
Yeah, I was picking up on that as well. I didn't go through and count them, but
I didn't either.
Based on current diagrams, there's not a lot, not as many partials as what I am accustomed to seeing, and it's not like it's difficult for them to add these partials in the diagrams because this has all been done in 3D modeling software, and so it's pretty easy to drag and drop those partials in using that software. So I mean, there's several stages, I mean, a good chunk of them actually that are pretty much all open targets.
Well, I've got stage 1 up on the screen, and every single nope, I'm sorry. If you can see my cursor back here, that's the only target that is it's got like a half a tuxedo, so half the left side of the target's blacked out. So
Yep.
But it would also be easy for them just to slap a bunch of no shoots over some of those and really change the
Yeah.
dynamic too.
Well, yeah. Again, and I personally expect to see. Again, I'm looking like here's another example. Stage 19 looks like all open targets, and maybe that's a no shoot stack next to a barrel, but everything else is wide open. That's a stage I look at and go, I would expect to see some partials added in the field once they lay things out in the ground. I don't
Right.
know how prevalent that is at a national level match where you change things up that much. We see it all the time, obviously, at like locals and level twos, where
Right.
stage designers and match directors are like, "Hey, let's add a partial there, a no shoot, a hard cover. Let's spice this up a little bit." But hey, we're designing stages on software here for a major national championship, and it's not hard to like give us a little bit of an indicator that hey, you're going to probably see 3 or 4 partials on this stage. Stage 21, another good example, all open targets. Stage
Yeah.
20, all open except for it looks like a no shoot stack. Stage 19, I mentioned how it's basically all wide open. 18's got a couple of partials. 17 is that standard stage with partial hard covers. Stage 16, like, okay, so here's a good one, right? You got 4 poppers. Looks like a bobbing target with a stomp pad activator. Uh, this one looks like a nice mix. Got looks like 3 hardcover partials and 2 no shoots on this stage on a target that only has 11 targets to begin with, or on a stage with only 11 targets total. So a little more than half of your targets on this stage are partials. Okay, cool. I expect things to be difficult at nationals for sure,
Yeah, and you've
but
got
seeing this level of open targets is kind of like interesting. A little bit
yeah,
hoserish
and
maybe. I don't know.
this one here you've got a stacked target, that same stage with a no shoot. So the shoulders of that bottom target right above that is a no shoot. You got a no shoot over here. And then yeah, a couple of partials. And it looks like the bobber is also a partial actually with
Yep.
hardcover. So,
Yep.
and here's a curious part. The white, did they paint it? Is it just white in the now this is where this is something I would be thinking about when I go to walk the stages at Carry Optics Nationals. In the diagram, this is white. Is it black on the ground or is it white where they're like, okay, this is if you hit the steel, it's like hitting a no shoot. You know what I mean? Like that would make things a little spicy too.
Yeah. That would be interesting. There's a tendency on bobbing targets, especially where there's steel, on the bottom portion to for people to hit the. It's usually hardcover, usually,
Yeah, it's a magnet
and
for me.
again, as you
Yeah.
noted, there's a hardcover on the lower, half or so of the actual target.
Mm-hmm.
And could they mix that up with some no shoot steel? Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. I don't know if that is how. I mean, we do see a consistency everywhere else in the matchbook where they show hardcover steel appears to have everything painted black. So yeah, interesting that you picked up on that.
Yeah. Very interesting. So I want to go back to let me go back to stage one here real quick
Yep.
because I just interviewed Drew Maruski last night, so he'll be on a later one. But I talked about it again with him because last year's Carry Optics Nationals, there was one stage that really stuck out in my mind, even today, and that is the visual start where 99.9% of us went right and did basically a big counterclockwise circle. But Nils, JJ, and Max all went far left, doubled back, and then went right. I'm sorry, Nils actually went counterclockwise like the rest of us. JJ and Nils on the super
Mm,
squad are the only two on the super squad that went left.
mm,
Everybody else did the right like I did. It
yep.
didn't even dawn on me because when I looked at it, I was like, no, that's too much backtracking. it's going to be slow. But wouldn't you know it, Max and JJ were both under, I'm going to use 19 seconds. I think that's what it was. They were both under 19 seconds, but Nils was the only other one in the entire match that was under 19 seconds with him. And I was
Yep.
like, how in the world did I miss that? It never dawned on me because I was like, it's going to be too slow. Now I look at stage one, and the first thing that came in my mind was, okay, I'm starting sitting at a table, so I'm not shooting. I got to get up and move. Now this is where maybe I run all the way left and then start shooting coming back to the right, where it's an easier movement for me. Obviously, I would need to get there and see what it actually looks like on the ground. But how did you run that? I think it was stage 14. No,
That sounds about right.
stage. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it would be. It would be up top. So yeah, like stage 14 or 15. But did you run counterclockwise or left and then right?
I did basically, yeah, the counterclockwise plan that most shooters that I also saw did, and much of my logic was the same as what you just described. Is that, in my view, I knew I'd have to go all the way left anyway, um, and it felt like backtracking to do it the way like you were describing. And so I did the counterclockwise plan. I don't remember exactly what my time was on that stage. It wasn't phenomenal because I did have there was a little I don't remember exactly what it was. I remember having a little bit of a hiccup somewhere in there. I don't think my overall score on the stage was terrible. I don't think it was my best stage either, but ran the counterclockwise plan. I think for me, I really liked the way I could come out of the start position, immediately shoot what was like two targets on the right, and right then and there, if you transitioned left, everything in the middle basically just opened up beautifully. It just the way that appeared to me from a stage planning standpoint and a flow just felt really good and natural. Oh, that's right. I remember I had a hiccup. I think it was on the towards the end of that right position. It was like a trigger freeze or something, and I think that's kind of what threw things off for me. But
Hmm.
but the trick there, if you're doing that counterclockwise plan, is you then ran around the front and came back in, and you kind of had to come into this position, you know, retreating slightly, but then having to address a target that was to the right. And so that was a little bit awkward. And that was one thing I remember weighing. I was like, well, okay, there's this going left first plan. Um, and then but I like the right, going to the right first plan better, except for that kind of coming into that back left position after you've run around the front. And
Right.
I figured, as long as I hit my spot, I think I'll be good. And the truth of the matter is, I did come in a little bit hotter than what I intended, and so I missed the spot just a little bit. So it's a little bit slow engaging my first target as I came back into the shooting area. But in the end, I got through that one without any major screw ups. So it worked out okay for me, I suppose. But definitely not sub 20-second time. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I have to amend it because where's he at? Tyler Meisenheimer was
Mm,
sixth, and it was under 18. So he was one of
wow.
four who were under 18. Everybody else was 19 seconds or longer.
Yeah.
So and I don't know I don't remember what his stage plan was, but I only bring that up because now when I see something like this in a matchbook, I'm like, all right, I need to physically look at this on the ground and compare going all the way left or all the way right. Because I screwed the pooch last year and did not realize that backtracking wasn't slower, you know? So,
Yep. So I see mine here. I did it in 20.84 seconds. So not
okay.
not terribly slow, uh,
No.
but I did have a few more Charlies than would have been ideal. So it ended up being an 80% run. Um, But my goal for nationals last year was average between 80 and 85% on every stage of the stage winner. Because I had done the math after the previous year's nationals of, and basically I realized that I was pushing and trying way harder than I needed to. And I knew that when I just shoot my game, that I can finish pretty consistently 80 to 85% of any given stage winner.
Okay.
And that if you can do that consistently across 20, 21, 22 stages, that you'll finish pretty good, at least better than what I had in years past. And that strategy won big for me last year. And
You
that's
actually
my
exceeded
goal
your
this
goal.
year. What's that?
You actually exceeded your goal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So here's what's interesting, right? So I think I averaged like 80. If you average out all of my stage finishes, it was like an 82% stage finish average. And then what that translated to was an 87% overall finish in the match.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
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 I,
So
I would have thought those two numbers would be the same, but I guess not.
no, because what's interesting, right, is that the overall match winner does not win every stage, right? If the
Correct.
overall winner did win every stage, then those numbers would correlate much more closely. But since you've got, I mean, and this is such a deep field with carry optics now, and you've got a lot of really great shooters, and you got a lot of guys uh, that are really pushing. You're going to tend to see, like, I don't remember exactly how many stages. We could obviously look real quick. I don't remember how many stages Neil's won. There's one, two. Neil's won two
Actually,
stages the whole match,
yeah, not that many.
right?
But his consistency is second to none.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so you look at so here's his finishes: 90%, 94%, 100%, 94, 79. I think is his worst one, and that was on which one was that? Oh, I don't remember for sure. That's the next one after the all steel stage. 79, 97, 100, 94, 93, 97, 93, 81, 93, 95, 79. 86, 89, 91, 94. So he's probably averaging right around 91, 92% stage finishes. And so, and that translates to winning the match. This all became my strategy after I looked back over several years of national championships and just looking at trends amongst winners and like top 3, top 5, top 10 finishers, and just generating some numbers of, well, what was their average stage placement? What was their average stage finish in terms of percentage? And then how did that translate to where they finished in the overall? And so again, my strategy, like what I learned from years of shooting major matches, was when I just shoot my game, I can finish consistently 82, 83, 84% of a stage winner on any given stage. And I suspected that would mean that I would finish somewhere between 85 and 88% in the overall match. And I was like, well, that would be a heck of a lot better than the year before where I finished 80% overall. And it was. So it was like a 7 to 8% increase year over year for me in finishes by taking that approach. And I was much more relaxed throughout the match because I just was shooting my thing. I didn't win any stages. The previous national championship, I won stage 19, I think it was. I've won many stages at area championships, but I was very hot or cold, hot or cold. And last year's nationals was, I mean, I had one stage that I kind of crashed and burned on, but it was that quick little speed shoot stage 2 where you had the stomp pad activator and
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
three targets,
Yep.
one of them with a no shoot, and it was Virginia count, and I just barely tagged the no shoot, and I also made it up. Which, by the way, the math worked out. My hit factor was probably zero point 0.2 higher because I took the extra shot penalty, but because the makeup was so fast, it basically was a wash. Either way, hitting the no shoot cost me, probably a 90% finish, and it was a 32% finish. But it was a whopping what, 35-point stage.
Yeah, so it
But
didn't kill
everything
you.
else, I averaged basically between, like, my best stage finish was stage 9, a 93% finish, and everything else was in that. Well, I have a couple, like, here's a 76%, 79%. But if you average it all out, I averaged like 82%. And
Okay.
I was very relaxed and shot very consistently.
So
So
19 the year before, that was the crazy ammo can strong hand only stage.
it wasn't the ammo can one. It was the one right before it.
Okay.
So maybe it was 18, but I thought
Oh,
there was 20 stages.
okay.
I
Then
could
that
be
would have
wrong, but
been the one right before it would be the
had
one in
the
the corner where you had the 4 and they were all like activated targets or something like that.
uh, you know, I
Yeah,
don't ask
it,
me to
it
recall
all
the stuff.
runs
What
together.
I do remember is it was a pretty big stage, and it had these
Oh.
swings that were on long arms, and they gave you like the top third or whatever of an IPSC target, like 20
Mm.
yard swings on long arms with a very small IPSC partial, and they were just like woof, woof, woof. And I remember
Gotcha.
a lot of dudes had mics on that stage, and I got through it clean. And I guess it was just good enough to have, the stage win. But
Nice.
but last year I wasn't trying to win any stages. Didn't care, to be honest. I just was, nope, just do my game, just do my thing. And so this year, similar approach, but I'm hoping to just bump that average stage finish up a point or two, because I know I'm not going to make any like huge gains year to year, especially where we haven't had a full year to prepare. And even
Yeah.
even this national championship is fairly early in the shooting season, relatively speaking. So,
Too early.
but, if I finished 82% average stage finish last year, I'm going to try to finish 83 or 84% this go around, and maybe that translates to an 88, 89% overall finish. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
So yeah,
Now,
just keep
when you
keep
when
moving
you
up.
went, there you go. And 1% is an improvement. So on something like this, other than the table start and my little idiosyncrasy of making sure I don't forget to check both directions, does anything else stand out on here for you other than there's 2 poppers and a table start?
So on stage one, I could see potentially. Let's see. I mean, I think it's going to come down to um, the distance those mini poppers are at. It looks like that furthest forward one's probably not too terrible. Well, I guess they're really probably about the same, because that stage area, or the shooting area, is probably pretty proportional. But relative to those target distances, I think it's just going to come down to how far out those mini poppers are and how many people are going to have makeups on them. That was another goal of mine last year, was just try to limit the makeups on steel, because I had struggled with it previously, and I did a lot better last year. So I don't shoot my steel as aggressively as what I have in the past, or as aggressively as I'd like to. But I'll get there. But I'm shooting a bit. I'm just trying to make sure I go 1 for 1 where possible on steel, because I did the math on that. For me, with where my current skill is at, if I'm shooting a little less aggressively on steel, but I'm connecting, 96% of the time, that saves me seconds. Like probably 10 seconds over the course of the whole
Wow.
match, compared to previous years. Where I'd especially on far mini poppers, man, I had a lot of makeups in 2021. So, but yeah, this stage, I think, yeah, it'll just depend on the exact layout. And like you were talking about, is this one where I'm going to want to go right or go left? I think it's just going to depend on exactly where that table ends up relative to everything else. But the table and the chair, because you are starting seated with hands on knees, handgun unloaded on mark,
Yep.
and it's outside the shooting area. So, in all honesty, as I'm looking at this one, the way it's currently depicted, I'm probably, because I'm out of that seat and gun in hand, loaded, probably just right before I'm entering the shooting area, and so I'm probably just going to go right. I'll probably come off that table, go to the right, and start right out the right and make my way to the left based on what I'm looking at here. To me, I think it looks like it's probably too far to go all the way to the left. And that's just a ton of running with no shooting. Now, one thing that's interesting, I think we should talk about this a little bit, David.
Okay.
This is, nobody has done a national championship yet at this new facility in Marengo, Ohio. Um, they built, I think 9 new bays to make this all possible. And those are true, dirt berm bays on 3 sides to where we can do kind of whatever we want within the 180 degrees. The older bays, I don't think they're that old, but they're older now compared to the new ones that have been built. There's like I think 11 or something of those bays, or 10, no, maybe 12 of those. Yeah, there's 12 of those, and most of those bays have um, have wood sidewalls,
Right.
right?
With
And they don't
filler.
want you, they, yeah, they don't want you shooting into those sidewalls. Now they do have bullet traps, and I was back looking at the Buckeye Blast videos that people posted on YouTube in the last week or so, looking at the Buckeye Blast videos to kind of see how they were setting up stages in those bays and things. And I got a pretty good feel for it. And I appreciate that they have bullet traps, so you're not always obligated to only put everything into the back berm. And so that gives some creativity there. But the first zone and zone 2A are probably going to be a little bit more limiting than what we're going to see on bays or zone 2B and zone 3, right? Um, Now, the one thing to note is that this stage 1 that we're talking about right now is that furthest left or furthest west bay, which on that bay, it's a dirt berm on the left side. And then the back berm's dirt.
Ah.
And then the right berm is the wood wall. And so I suspect this stage is one where we're going to see the right half of the stage is going to be more or less everything fired into the back berm. But as you get to the left side of the stage, it's going to open up more and more. And then from stages 2 all the way through stage 9, or excuse me, stage 7 is where we're going to see more limitations of the majority of our shooting being downrange and not as much to the side. We'll see how many of those bullet traps they actually have that they can put to use. But then stage 9 is the one where it'll be on the far right or far east bay, and that's also one where that right side berm will be dirt. So if you go and look at stage 9, if I recall correctly,
3, 4,
actually they don't
5,
really
6,
show it here.
7, 8,
So
9.
that's
Oh,
one where they could have more of that open up on the right, but it doesn't necessarily look that way based on the current diagram. But
no, but again, that's where things could change once you get there and walk them, you know?
yeah. Now the other thing that's interesting to note is, and you'll notice looking at the range diagram, that zones 1 and 2A in these older wood walled shooting bays, they're only about 40 or 45 feet wide. And so even when we look at some of these stage diagrams, like stage 1 or stage 2 that you have up there, it's
Yeah.
probably not going to really appear quite as wide as what you may perceive just looking at the diagram, because they only have 40 to 45 feet to work with. When you get down to zones 2B and zone 3, then those are, I think, 60-foot wide, give or take. It might be, and we don't have satellite images of that, but I was just kind of guessing based on what I saw from the Buckeye Blast. So those bays are quite a bit wider down in zone 3 and zone 2B. So they're just some things to think about there. And I think that's why we don't see a lot of doubled up stages in zone 1 and 2A, because there's just not that much width to fit 2 stages in there. Because when I was
Right.
going through it, I was like, well, this is interesting that where we finally get to the big bays, now all of a sudden we have all these like small, like 12 round count stages and stuff. But as I was thinking about it, I'm like, no, that makes sense. They were trying to get the stage count up there. and they couldn't have doubled up stages until you got to those bigger, newer berms.
Right. Now, stage two, like stage one, is stage one is a little bit more right starting, but stage two is a middle of the stage start, hands on a
Yeah.
wall and then again, another one of those. Am I going all the way right? Am I going all the way left? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So,
And you've got some of those, tight angle shots, like some of those middle positions. You got some targets kind of hiding behind barrels and things, and so it'll be interesting to see how much you can actually flow through those positions,
right.
or if it's going to be more of a kind of start and stop type game in that respect. I wonder, seeing some of these designs, and this has been a question I've been asking, especially where there's so many open targets, how much of this you're going to actually be able to shoot on the move. And as of right now, it looks promising to me. Um, there's a number of stages where I think there could be some huge opportunities for shooting on the move. That's been something that's been not as prevalent at some of the more recent major matches that I've attended. Um, Meaning that Production Nationals last year, Care Optics Nationals last year had a little bit of movement opportunity, but really not as much as maybe what we'd seen in previous years. Some of the area championships I've attended in the last year or so, similar kind of thing. And so I've heard some people talk about that, kind of regretting that there weren't more moving and shooting opportunities. And this one looks like there's some potential there. It'll just all depend on how it gets laid out on the ground. But I
Right.
like what I'm seeing because I like shooting on the move. It's something that I'm a little bit better at than probably the average person. And I'm a bigger, fatter, older guy in this sport with a bunch of younger, lighter, quicker kids. And I like the opportunity where possible to shoot on the move, or at least have that choice, because that's where I can gain a little bit of ground if I can really be dialed in on my shooting while
Right.
moving.
And going back to stage one real quick, the thing that was going through my mind when I was like, would I be going left or right? I said, I prefer shooting left to right like most righties do.
Hmm.
But I was like, okay, I was specifically looking at this and I'm like, what I need to look at here is when I walk it, if I go right, can I shoot this on the move coming backwards? And can I shoot it on the move going forwards? Because I shoot going forwards on the move much better than backward. And I
Yep.
don't know if that's just a comfort thing or, but,
Well, it's just a
so that would
fact.
also, I feel like that would also make my stage faster, my stage plan faster, even if I have to run a little bit more left. The fact that I could walk forward and shoot and then make that right turn, I feel like would make me quicker too. So, yeah, I agree. The shooting on the move is a big one. And this one in particular, I almost feel like this stage two has the potential to literally be run right, run left, and then literally just walk from one side to the other shooting.
Yep.
Especially, the guys, not me, but everybody above me, where, the higher up you go, the faster this walk is going to be.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Stage two. This is a great example of one that I could see. I could see this stage being one that is where a lot of it shot on the move by the more skilled shooters. The one
Mm-hmm.
thing is the mini poppers in the middle section there would be, one place where it's like, do I take a little extra risk here and try to shoot those
Right.
while still moving? Or am I going to need to, do a little pause here or stutter step or something to, hit those mini poppers? But it is a stage, again, just depending on how it goes out on the ground. Looks like it has great potential to be one where if you're a little bit more willing to take some extra risk, or your skill is just there, shoot it on the move as much as possible.
Yeah.
I like the look of this stage. Again, depending on how far exactly from the start position. This is the one where I think it's the only stage that I've seen where it's hands on marks. It looks like it's a bit further from the left from the starting position, but I like the way it looks going to the left, and
Yeah.
because it looks like that middle section opens up as you're coming up this diagonal portion, and you could shoot a lot of that. Depending on the actual distance of those mini poppers, is going to depend on how aggressively you could shoot those while moving. But you've got even a IPSC kind of in the back left there that would be probably your last target you would engage while you flow through that middle position. And you may just be a step or two away from opening up the 3-target array in that kind of second to last position. It looks like it could flow really nicely. So there's good potential there. I like the way that one looks.
Yeah, and it looks like that middle position, as you called it, with the steel would also be, just running it through my head initially, I'm like, okay, this would also be a good spot. This is 17 rounds up to here, assuming it didn't change now. A perfect spot for going from here to reload, gives you just enough time to reload and then just keep moving and you go.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, and that's
this is, I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Yeah, again, looking to where you might have maybe 2 steps, give or take, there from that second position to the third position. Yeah, exactly. That's the other reason I like the way that one looks and flows, as it's currently laid out. Shoot, hope as much as possible on the move through position 1 and 2, reload going into position 3, and shoot through that array as you continue to move to the right, and you finish on 2 more. Actually, it looks like 2 more targets on the right side of the wall, and then maybe that's where that little target behind the barrel opens up as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like to look at that.
Yeah, it's gonna be that's an exciting stage. Now 3. What do we have here for 3? Whoop. Let me go back just a tad. There we go. 22 rounds, 9 IPSC, 4 poppers, now this is interesting. Standing completely outside, left side, right side, all the way up front, but you choose. So I could see where, this is just going to be, it almost looks identical. So it's just, I feel almost like this is a matter of, are you a lefty and prefer shooting going left?
Yep.
And are you a righty who prefers shooting right? That's how you're going.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you got this kind of U-shaped shooting area. That's exactly, unless there's something target presentation wise that is somewhat tricky.
Right. Yeah.
Somewhere. I suspect that most righties will start on the left and most lefties will start on the right. Another stage that has potential for some shooting on the move. They do have it broken up pretty good with a bunch of poppers kind of throughout the stage in different positions. But yeah, it also looks like another fun one. 22 rounds, so it's probably with 4 poppers. I guess those are. I don't know if those are full size poppers or minis or what, but there's enough poppers in the mix there that I'm doing a reload somewhere, with a 22 round count stage. So
right.
But a real a real risk taker might want to try to get through that one.
Well,
without a reload.
And this is where I think this stage is easier than stage 2, where I think you have more chance. You definitely have to almost stop when you have a cluster of steel targets. Like with the 3, you're pausing almost to the point of completely stopping. Whereas here you have 1, you can just kind of slow it down enough to keep that dot on there to pull the trigger. So it makes it a little bit easier to keep yourself going.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, the different because you have kind of 2 intermediate positions there, right? With 2 paper and 1 popper. It'd be interesting to see just how open or narrow those little positions are. I think that's going to be the piece that dictates the most of what you're actually able to get away with movement wise. Again, keep in mind this is going to be shot in those narrower. Wood-sided bays. This one looks like it's laid out fairly wide. I don't think it's going to be probably quite that wide. I mean, because if you're trying to judge anything to do with whatsoever with scale, this looks like this is set up in at least a 60-foot or a 70-foot wide bay, and that
Right.
doesn't exist. So
Right.
it's going to be perceptually,
Yeah,
it's going to
much
be a
more
bit narrow.
compact on the edges at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you will
So
notice that a lot of the targets they have set up here appear to be with the intent of keeping shots into the back berm wall. There might
right.
be one or two where they have to use a bullet trap or something.
All right, so I'm going to throw out let's say you got there and we'll just say this steel target on the far right's in a little bit and the paper target on the far left is in a little bit. Are you drawing on the popper or paper?
So, looking at this stage as of right now, and you see there's kind of that IPSC paper that's tucked away behind the wall a little bit.
Yep, right
Yeah,
there.
right there. So I would likely start on the left side on this stage, and I would step in and probably draw to that target right there. So I'd shoot that inside one first, then the next paper, then the popper, and the far left paper probably backing, moving out of that position
Right.
and trying to set
Okay.
myself up for the next position there. That's what I
Okay.
like looking at this.
Okay.
So basically, my way out of that position.
See, and the only reason I ask is for me, I would shoot the paper in that order, but I think I would draw on the steel because I have found that I have a higher hit factor drawing to steel versus transitioning to steel.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I
Interesting.
know that my strength is to that stepping back and drawing and getting that initial sight picture. I know I have a 95% chance first round impact where I want it. And then I can just transition, shoot, and
Mm.
start backing out and shooting that one.
Yeah.
That's why I
Yeah.
asked.
So yeah, this is one of those things too, where depending on exactly how wide these angles actually are going to be or
Sure.
not, that's going to play into it. I am all about minimizing transition distance as well, and not having to, backtrack on transitions. And so that's one of those things where, and I would, with you, I would suggest even like this, that knowing that, it would probably be good for you to spend some time practicing transitioning onto steel so
Yeah.
you can make that less of a factor for you so that you can make decisions on stage plans or strategies based on what it truly is the most efficient way to shoot that as opposed to, well, I got to do it this way
Strength.
because this is my
Right.
weakness or
Right.
vice versa. Yeah. But
Yeah, I agree.
yep.
I end up treating steel like paper when I transition. So sometimes, I'm not letting the dot settle enough before I shoot.
Yeah.
So,
And that's where, and I think it was Brian Enos in his book way back, right? Where he talks about some different, call it aiming solutions or aiming schemes. And he talks a fair amount in his book about shooting steel challenge because he did quite a bit of that back in the day and kind of what that looked like as far as what do I need to see when I'm shooting steel. And I was very much that way, David, where if I saw my dot on a piece of steel, like it's on there, so send it. But the truth is like where I really need to see that dot is more in the center of the steel, and I need to be a little bit more disciplined to not
yeah.
necessarily send it just because it's on the steel because it's only an inch in from the edge. Well, yes, an inch in from the edge or even right on the edge. Well, the dot's there. However, if I don't make a perfect shot, like there's not much leeway because it may be there on the outer rim of the steel, but one little mistake in executing
Yeah.
that shot, and it's off. Like I'm just as likely to be off that steel as I am to be on the steel when I'm on the edge. So that's something I've worked quite a bit in the last year or so is being more disciplined with, hey, let's see the dot on the middle of the steel and not not accept it when it's on the outside edges. On the paper, we get tricked into that because we think, I've got the paper is so much more forgiving because I'm trying to shoot alphas, but even when I don't hit an alpha, I'm still going to have a hit somewhere on there and probably in a Charlie because I have all this forgiveness. But the steel is unforgiving, so got to take a
For
little bit of a
sure.
different mental approach with the steel.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Now, stage 4, now we've got more steel peppered in there.
Yep.
4 paper, I'm sorry, 12 paper, 4 steel, and straddling the start stick in the middle. So another middle start almost.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah. So do you like left or do you like left? Right.
yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
you'll
Do you like
probably see
left
it.
or do you like left?
Yeah.
Because I like left.
And then, so like again, this is one of those situations where you probably will see a bias with amongst the shooters based on what which hand is their strong hand. Um, you probably see some people making the decision that it's like there's some shooters out there that prefer ending where possible on a swinging target or a moving target, and so in this case you have that on the left side. It looks like it says popper 2 activates a moving target. It doesn't specify
Right.
what kind of. It looks like a swinger. Doesn't mean it has to be, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, I don't make decisions based on, well, I like to end on this or that
Me
so
either.
much. But this one looks like one where I probably want to go left first. But that could always change depending on what we see on the ground.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it does look, frankly, this there's some similarities between this one and stage 2, aren't there? As far as that, you kind of have this little diagonal section on the left
Yep.
middle side there, and depending on how that plays in with the second, kind of hallway, so to speak, the kind of a second target array there. That might be one again where maybe you're able to take some of that on the move. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
tempt you a little bit with that no shoot partial, which is probably the first target that opens up in that
Yes.
scenario. And so that could be interesting how that plays into it. And again, you might get there and look at it and go, well, no, in this case, it makes a little more sense for me to go right. And then when I come into some of those middle positions, I'm not starting on that partial target. Um, I don't tend to look at things too much from that. I just look at it, hey, this is a partial target, and this is the one I'm going to be a little more careful on. But I want to try to ultimately shoot the stage in the most efficient manner possible.
Right.
But
Yeah, and
there's
this is where if you're a lefty and you decide to go right to left, you could. Now again, chances are targets are changing, but as they have it in the diagram, if you're coming right to left, it looks like you have a better chance to keep moving through this array right this the second array from the left
yeah,
because
transitioning from the
open to
the next
open
array
to
to it.
yeah. It-
Hmm.
so it'd be interesting. But I don't see anything there that really kind of sticks out until you actually get there and then see how that target is. Again, that's a white front stop in front of that swinger. So is that meant to be white or no?
Mm, sure, sure. And this is a 28 round stage, so you're going to want to plan a reload somewhere in there. So
Uh,
something else to consider.
and it also looks like an easy stage to plan that reload. Like you still have enough movement in there that it's like, okay, I could pretty much do a reload wherever I
Yeah,
need here in the middle. So not too
agreed.
difficult.
Yep,
Stage 5 looks like a classifier.
it sure does. Even the way it's drawn out.
Yeah, it's drawn out. It's the stage procedures written, everything. But yeah, this is one we talked about earlier, Virginia count, but very simple, very straightforward. So nothing tricky. And your weak hand only is only at 10 yards, so that's not too bad.
Only,
I
but
know.
but it does look like these are open targets.
Exactly.
As we can
And now,
tell. So yeah,
yeah.
pretty forgiving as far as that goes. I mean, obviously, I want to collect as many alphas as possible, but it doesn't appear as though I'm shooting weak hand only at 10 yards with some kind of no shoot partial or something. So there's that.
Right.
But again,
Yeah.
this you're right. We talked about this one earlier. Don't know if we need to like spend too much more time on it. I
No.
already touched on the fact that I think this is kind of a uninventive, a non. It's not very. I don't think the stage is particularly creative. This is probably my least favorite of the whole match, based on what I've seen.
Right. They're just getting numbers for a classifier.
Yeah. Well, and even if you look at it from a, hey, here's a 23 series classifier. Okay.
Yeah, I
it,
agree.
it it has all the feel of a 99 series classifier.
It does. Yeah. I much prefer the newer ones where you've got some movement now and some other things that you're adding in. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, stage 6 is that 24 round. So if you can do 24 plus 1, what are you doing? I'm definitely reloading. But
Yeah.
again, middle of the stage start.
Yeah. So we are seeing that trend for sure. This is definitely a reload stage. This would be dumb to try to go for, without a reload. I think. I mean, number one, there's probably opportunities to actually get a reload in there efficiently, and you've got two mini poppers, two full size poppers, and two moving targets.
Yeah.
So there's too many
Looks like
opportunities for makeups to be required. So yeah, reload somewhere in there.
swinger and a bobber. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, and it looks like you got a mini popper in front of a full size popper, but that could change. They could flip flop. You know what I mean?
Right.
They might end up putting the full size in front and put the
Yep.
mini behind. So,
Yep. Or even two full size ones back to back. And it
yeah.
says P2 activates moving target and P4 activates moving target. So that likely means it's, I suspect it's the target that's hidden behind slightly in both of those cases.
Yeah, I would
And
agree.
so, but you have paper targets there as an opportunity to, take up some of that activation time should you need.
Yeah. Depending on how long it takes to activate. Yeah, I
Yep.
agree.
Yep.
So, fairly simple,
Yep.
straightforward.
Yep.
Stage
From
7.
stage 7. Yeah. Again, look at this. Complete on marks,
Yeah.
front of the shooting position or shooting area, but also again kind of in the middle of things.
Yeah. You're going to have to go right and you have to go left from the middle.
But in all honesty, like I think this is about what I'd expect to see at a major match, especially a national championship, because um, while I am not like we certainly see those stages that are designed to be more or less symmetrical, and people will say, well, hey, I want to make sure it's equally applicable to right and left-handed shooters, but honestly a lot of symmetrical stages are kind of boring. It's like, well,
Right.
I do the thing on this side and I'm going to just do the same thing on that side, and you usually have a reload somewhere in the middle, between the two halves, if you will, of the stage or something like that. So it's kind of uninventive. um, I appreciate a stage that I think gives you enough options, and while still maintaining parity between left and right-handed shooters. And I think that's what you're seeing here, based on as far as I can tell, is you're getting the option. Hey, a lot of kind of middle start positions. You can go left, you can go right. There might be one of those directions that has a slight advantage from maybe certain target engagements or target engagement orders, but generally, I think what we're seeing so far looks, I think, pretty even-handed. Because ultimately,
Yeah.
um, I know a lot of shooters prefer going left or right because of reloads, and it's safer, less DQ likelihood, and so on. But honestly, this is a national championship, especially like you should be at a level where you're not like your skills should be, you should be good enough to be comfortable with doing reloads going to your opposite or going the other way, the way that's uncomfortable or whatever, because I
Right.
mean that's a skill I think that you should have. And so I think if you look at a stage and you're like, no, this makes sense to shoot right to left and I'm a righty, and that means my reloads being done in kind of this like awkward direction where I'm maybe a little bit concerned about a DQ. Well, make sure that's not an issue for you. Make sure that you practice that type of reload. Make sure you know how to keep the muzzle oriented, still downrange. And yeah, it's maybe not optimized for your particular reload angle, but it's something that comes up and that we have to be prepared for. Um, but well, like I said, to summarize all that, I think a lot of middle start positions, because I think that creates opportunities for lefties and righties to generally compete with each other and not favor one or the other too much. And we see, like for instance, we've seen a couple start positions where it's kind of in the middle, but maybe biased towards one side or the other. We've seen a couple
Right.
of them where they were a little bit biased to the right side of the stage. So if we go right to stage 9, we see it's kind of biased to the left side. So I think that again shows some even-handedness here. Now
Yeah.
back to stage 7, 20-round stage, 2 movers, looks like swingers, couple of activations. Steel, it says P3 activates and P4 activates, so it's not something tricky where one of those far left steel are activating one of the swingers. You got a mini popper
Right.
next to a swinger and a full size popper next to a swinger,
Yep.
and looks like maybe one paper target in there that you might be able to go steel paper, and then over to your swinging targets. Kind of that's my guess is what they're trying to test us on here.
The interesting thing too is depending on how they do this left side over here,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be interesting if you, since they're visible at rest, if you could
True.
actually see them from an ending position. Because then I
Yeah.
could see people just engaging the steel, shooting everything, and then shooting them at the end.
Yeah. If you're the kind of shooter that, based on your current skill level, you're more comfortable with that and you want to give those swingers some time to settle down a little bit, uh, or whatever, I could see that. And I certainly have no problem with, I even appreciate the option to be able to do that. I think it's a rare situation where that makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, but
Right.
we all got to play to our own individual skill levels and strengths and weaknesses. It's rare I leave something swinging for later if I can shoot it right then and there. Um,
Agree.
but
I could see it being a
yeah,
timing issue, though. You know what I mean? Like the say the one on the right takes forever to activate, while
sure.
the one on the left is quicker. Maybe you shoot the one on the left, you leave the one on the right for later from another position. I don't know, but
Yeah,
you
that
do
could be.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like there is maybe one target that they'll leave out there to take up that time, all the way in the back right there.
Yep. Yep.
So it'll
Yep.
it'll be again another interesting one to see what it actually looks like on the ground and the timing behind all of it.
Yep. Stage 7, so this is still in zone 2A. So this is I think the last stage if you're going in order that is going to
Mm,
be defined within the wood walls. So
okay,
just
there you go.
yep.
Yeah, and then this is the one you were talking about, stage 9. We skipped stage 8 because that's chrono.
Yeah, I don't know if that I saw initially 21 stages, right? I'm like, "Oh, okay, 21 round stages. That's
Yeah,
cool." And then I'm like I printed everything off and I only print the actual stage diagrams. I don't print all the ads.
right.
But I print them all off and I'm going through and I'm like, wait a minute, where's stage 8? Where's stage 8? They numbered chrono as stage 8. That's not my
Yep.
favorite way. I was actually disappointed to see that. I would much rather shoot stage 7 and then go, when you're done, immediately go to a chrono and get it done. But it looks like we're going to have, a 45 to 60-minute wait, when we're in that zone 2A. So just something to think about. I'm guessing they'll probably, this is also kind of in the middle, close to where the vendors area and I think test fire bay and
Okay.
the shoot sig competition that they're also doing simultaneously.
The bill drill,
So
all
my
that.
guess is they're probably going to be like, hey, chrono, get your chrono done and, spend some time in the vendors village or whatever. Okay. I mean, it's important that we give thanks to our sponsors of this event, and it's good to have that time, I suppose, to do so. But it's not my favorite thing in the world to have a whole hour or whatever dedicated to chrono. Just
I
my
do
opinion.
like when they send the last two or three shooters over there, and then as you finish, go. That
Exactly.
does seem to speed things up a little bit.
Yeah, and plus you might even sometimes when you do it that way, I mean you can fit it depending on. I mean this is a range that has the bays available. I mean, depending on how many of these they actually are using for, it looks like they're using about 3 of them for the kind of um, test fire and all that kind of stuff. Um, but this is a range facility now that has developed itself towards becoming a world-class, major, national championship level match hosting location.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'd rather spend, time during my shooting day shooting stages and not standing around doing chrono. And so I'd much rather see another stage added in here, that where you do chrono simultaneously as part of that stop. But that's just me.
Mm,
So
gotcha. The stage 9 is a 25 round, 10 IPSC, 5 poppers. So this is definitely going to be a reload stage here. And this is what you were saying. It's not a left or right start, but it's definitely favored towards the left side.
yep. Yeah, I would say this one looks like, and by the way, we have a swinger on the far left of the stage and a bobber, it looks like, kind of in that middle portion.
Oh, yeah. Yep, right there.
And it specifies P1 activates a moving target,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then P5 activates a moving target. And based on P, if you're going from left to right, P1, big popper on the left. So in that position, you got a popper and a mini popper and an open paper target. And so, uh, that's great. You go to that far left position and you've got options there as far as how you engage that and optimize it for efficiency. Back to basically the middle position where it's also the start position, looks like that's where you can see popper 5 from. And so that appears to activate the bobbing target. We've got another IPSC. This is kind of this stage is really broken up, which I think is great. I mean, I like visual challenges. I mean, I don't like necessarily shooting choppy stages, and I'm not saying this one's choppy, but this one does look like one where positioning will be important, as far as
Yes.
being able to see the activating popper for the bobber and being able to actually see the IPSC that's kind of tucked away in the back there between a bunch of walls, being able to actually set yourself up where you can see the bobbing target, and then there's a stacked couple of targets there with no shoot next to the bobber. So there's a lot going on there, and I think positioning is going to be really key on this stage.
Agree. Yeah. You're gonna have to go to certain points to hit all the targets. So, and
Yep.
it looks like, from here you're going to shoot all the way across to over here, and then from here you're going to shoot all the way over to there. So there'll be some crisscrossing
Yep.
angles.
Yeah. And if this one lays out, anything close to the way a diagram shows, even if you're a left-handed shooter, I think this is a stage that makes sense to probably go to the left first. There's just way too much movement to the right side.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
and then you got, from that middle position to the far right side, you got, it looks like probably 2 full 8-foot sections of wall. So that's 16 feet. I mean, that's your reload, movement
Oh
right.
yeah, easily.
So, because this is a 25 round stage.
Yeah, as long as you have 2 targets left after the reload, you're solid with that initial magazine.
Yep.
Stage 10 is 15 USPSA targets, 2 poppers for a total of 32. Now, this is a big one, but this is definitely. Now, this one's favoring nobody. It is all the way in the back and the middle.
Yep.
This kind of reminds me of the one last year that was in Zone 2, um, where some people went right, some people went left. It just, who knows how people are going to go on this one.
Yeah. And by the way, this is the first stage that's in the new bays.
Mm,
Bigger, much
okay.
more space. This has the potential to be a pretty large stage, including with long shots and wide transitions. So, yeah, I suspect they're going to make the best use of that on a stage that's 32 rounds and has a lot going on here. It does have one, looks like a swinger, with activation by the popper that's back by it there. Um, due to the wall layout, David, I would be surprised if it made much sense to try to go left and kind of around the stage in a clockwise fashion, just because you'd have to backtrack. Kind of in a, like, if the wall was more straight, maybe
Right.
it makes sense. Maybe it would make more sense. But since you kind of have to go back and to the left,
Right.
I mean, even if I was a lefty, I'd probably considering starting on the right target or raise there before proceeding, through the rest of the stage. But again, how often do we see things laid out on the ground? You're like, oh, well, this
Yeah.
now looks like this now, and but definitely, I think there's some options here. So, and I'm all about options. I love creative stages. I love stages that, when you get done, you see high level shooters shoot it 3, 4 different ways sometimes. That stuff's always great to see because it just adds so much more creativity to the match, to the stage design, all of that.
Now imagine if they swapped the two sets of stack targets
Mm.
with the swinger and the steel, and then made that a low port.
Yeah, yeah. And again, and
Oof.
yeah, I mean, and this could be an opportunity where they choose to do that. Yeah, you point out very astutely that and it's very apparent. We got that window there, or a port with stacked no shoot sets of targets that are like the only place you're going to shoot those is through that port. So
Right.
yeah, and if stacked targets with no shoots are your weakness, it's something that's probably a good idea to practice in the next few weeks leading up to nationals. I was talking to somebody recently that I know is going to be there, and they were saying that exact setup is their nemesis, especially when they're side by side. And I'm like, well, you're going to see that at nationals, and you probably want to practice that.
Yeah, you might want to put that up on your wall and start dry firing that now, and then get out in
Yep.
the range and confirm.
Yep.
So that's a big stage. Now, stage 11. So, what do you think the theme of this match is?
As far as the
Well, like the titles of all of the stages.
uh, okay, so I was wondering about that, right? I mean, you got some interesting names here. Our Lady of the Worthless Miracle.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. There's some stuff here
Yeah.
that sounds familiar to me, but I have to admit, like if it's inspired by uh, movies or shows or whatever, which it kind of has that, like it seems to tie to maybe something like that, but maybe also something historical. Um, it sounds familiar, but I didn't quite put a pin on it.
Me
I'm
either.
not the biggest TV and movie watcher, just so you know. So, if there's some references here that I should know and I don't, I'm sorry. I just don't. I spend my time running a business and taking care of a family and shooting as much and practicing as much as possible, not really watching TV. But this one, I mean, I saw this stage name. I was like, Our Lady of the Worthless Miracle. I don't know where that comes from, if it comes from anything, but it's
It's a
kind of
song.
fun. Is it?
Yeah, I just Googled it while you were talking, and it says original lyrics of Our Lady of the Worthless Miracle song by Silent Drive.
I do not
No,
know it. I could say that.
me either.
Hmm. Some of the,
Okay.
and I wondered that too. There were a couple of these stage names that I was like, maybe a show, but maybe something music related. Um, and frankly, I'm just terrible with remembering stuff like that. One thing that's interesting about me is I love music. I listen to music quite a bit, especially when working. Um, but I like rhythm and beat and the sounds of music. I actually don't really listen to lyrics, and which sometimes gets me in trouble because sometimes I'm like, oh wait, I just realized what they're saying, and like that's interesting or maybe inappropriate or whatever.
Right.
Um, but like there's been plenty of songs where I've listened to them over the years and had no idea what was even being referenced, and then my wife's like, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea because I just like the way it sounds.
Yeah, that's what the first thing that gets me is the beat of the music. So
Yeah,
I'm in the
yeah.
same boat.
Well, let's look at this one. 24
Yeah.
rounds, anywhere in shooting area. Now, this is the first
There we
stage we've
go.
seen that gives us that option,
Right.
and there's not a lot. In fact, I don't remember any other stage. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I just okay. There is stage 13 is the same anywhere stage. Okay, I somehow missed that in my initial analysis here of these. So in zone 3 and a little bit 2B as well, we're going to see some. Zone 3's got a bunch. Anywhere in shooting area, anywhere shooting.
Yeah.
So this is the first we're seeing that. So
Yep.
I appreciate that. I like stages that allow you to start wherever, because then it's truly based on your preference, your shooting style, your strength, your weakness,
Yep.
left hand, right hand. I'm not saying every stage has to be like that, but I appreciate stages that give you that option. So this is the
I
first
do. Definitely my favorite. But this is definitely going to be a reload. Comstock, 24 round, 9
bunch of
paper,
pop.
6 poppers. Yeah. You got a swinger. So yeah, there's this is at least a 2 mag. Well, it should just be a 2 mag stage right here. So
I'll tell you, if somebody's got the balls to go for it without a reload, man, I want to see that video.
me too. Now I if time is not an issue,
Right. Now, again, keep in
uh,
mind that we're into that part of the match where these are the bigger bays, and so there's a much more opportunity to spread things out and have some longer shots. So, and a couple of these, let's see, six poppers, but 4 of them at least appear to be mini poppers, where 2 of them are full size. So this will probably test your patience and shooting discipline with respect to some of those popper shots.
right.
B2 activates a swinger. It looks like. And that target array's got 2 mini poppers, the swinger, and an open. Oh no, excuse me, 2 open IPSCs. One that's kind of tucked behind a barrel there. And then we have a middle section that you also got to go forward to a little bit. And so it'll be interesting to see if there's anybody that chooses to go like left and then right, or right then left, and then finish up front, or do more of a circular approach where you maybe go start left and then go to the front. You can kind of shoot in on a couple of targets there in that middle portion as you're coming from the left side. And then you could also then sort of maybe back out on the left side target as you finish up in those final 2 target arrays. Or if somebody chooses to start, I kind of doubt this on this stage, but if you could start anywhere, maybe you got somebody that wants to start in the front, middle, I don't know. But it kind of looks like one where you're either going to start left or start right.
Yeah, I agree.
Even though you have the option to start anywhere, you're probably taking one of those 2 options, would be my guess.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
I think that if you were, um, yeah, if it was me, if I was starting left, I'd probably start left, shoot this activation popper target array there as much as possible, shoot into that middle front position, then reload back to those final 2 target arrays. If I was going from the right side, I'd probably shoot the right side, go forward with the reload, shoot that middle array, or possibly save the reload till the final position on the left. But I'm kind of liking from this layout the left to right approach.
I, this is where if I'm a lefty and let's say it stays pretty true to this, then I'm definitely liking it because I feel like starting here. So this might be one where as a righty I still start on the right because I like being able to shoot these, move up, shoot those. I can start backing out and reload coming in over here. It's only 24 rounds, so
Yeah,
and you're if this stays the same,
yeah,
2, 4, 6, looks like 8 shots. So that means you only have 16 and these all these other ones combined. So interesting layout, and I like this transition at the end, pretty darn quick, especially if you're a lefty.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and it could be one too where depending on how visible, in that middle front portion, those 2 targets that are next to each other on the right,
yeah,
um, I'm curious to see where, exactly where you can see those from. Maybe you have the option of being able to shoot them kind of from the back, where the left walls, excuse me, sort of make that little turn you know, maybe it could be if you started on the right, you'd take the two right arrays, shoot that middle target there next to your cursor. There you go. Shoot that, then reload kind of into this back left position and shoot the other two targets in that array.
Right.
And from there you got to make maybe one or two quick steps to the left to
Yep.
finish out. I don't know. It could be interesting to see what kind of options are there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the actual layout on the ground, and I mean that right-sided start might be the better place to go.
Yeah.
But again, not a huge stage, so that's at the same time that's good. All right,
Yeah.
here's a short, fast stage right here.
Yep.
Woo.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the first. If we're looking at the schedule here that I had, let's see. Yeah, 12 and 13 are together. So we don't
Oh,
see
okay.
Yeah, so we don't see any doubled up stages until this is the first one. So 12 and 13 are together in the same bay. Um, this is two relatively quick. The 12 that we're on here is 14 rounds, and then stage 13 is 13 rounds. Um, and yeah, 12. Excuse me, straddling start stick, which is kind of in the front right,
Yep.
and you're loaded and holstered, wrist below belt. It appears to be all open IPSC targets up in that front position, so you're likely not drawing and moving. You're just going to draw right to whichever one of these three targets that you prefer, and then sort of retreating back and left to the middle target array, and then the far left target array. So
And this is going to be interesting. Again, let's say it stays true to the diagram. For me, this is going to be interesting where there's a couple of the advantage for the if you're a right-handed shooting person is these targets will be easier to engage than it would be for a lefty. But
mm-hmm.
the lefty coming out of here looks like they could engage these while moving, keep moving, and then engage those. Where, as I look at this from a right handed shooter, I'm like, well, maybe I shoot these three and just beat feet to this back corner, shoot those two. And if I'm able to see these two, maybe it's a single step over and then I engage those two. You know what I mean? So it could change completely the complexity depending on where these two right here are visible from.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Overall, though, I mean, this is probably a 7 to 9 second stage for the
Yeah.
vast majority of competitors, maybe even quicker for a couple of folks. And we're 14 shots, and just depending on how quickly you can get out of that first array and how much you can actually see and shoot, and including on the move on the middle section there. I suspect that that's really part of the whole test on this particular stage is shoot your way out of target array 1 and
Yep.
try to shoot across that middle section and all the way over to the left. So if you can keep the gun running, there's probably a potential for a 6-second run on this.
Yeah, the hit factors on this one will be very interesting because it's all going to depend on those center two targets and where they're visible from.
Yep. And that's
That will
likely where we'll
change.
see the most failures, on this stage as far as mics, people that aren't careful enough, not following through enough on each target in that middle section. If they're pulling off early, that kind of thing, as they're anxious to get to that final position. This brings up another thought. I forgot. This came up for me as I was reviewing things last night. One thing that we haven't seen, and we've seen at the last couple of national championships, is fixed time stage.
Yeah, there's no part-time stage.
And I could see a stage like this one, just to make it a little bit more challenging. I could see a stage like that one
Yes.
fixed time.
The other one too, Riley, was the one we talked about earlier where you had the wall, 3 targets on one side of the wall, 3 targets on the other. Would have been
Yep.
just like last year's. you
Yep.
know? So
Yep.
yeah,
Agreed.
I'm not a huge fan of part-time stages, but I did like last year's because it just adds a different complexion for that one stage, you know?
Yeah, agreed. I don't necessarily want to like. I would be mildly irritated if I was shooting a nationals and there was more than one fixed time
Right,
stage.
right,
But to have one and to use it on a stage that's, where you're doubling stages up in the same bay, and you want to just make something a little bit different, a little bit, add another layer of complexity or challenge to something that might otherwise be quite simple, really.
right,
I'm okay with that, in a like all things in moderation, as they say. I'm not above, shooting challenges and Virginia count and fixed time and things of that nature, or their own unique shooting challenges, but all things in moderation. And at the end of the day, this is America, and we like to blast all the things with all the pews all the time. Uh, yeah, but yeah, we haven't seen that one so far, at least in these diagrams. Now, again, have we seen instances at major matches where no indication of something like fixed time being present at the match, and then get there and find out a stage has been, the description has been modified or something to add something like that? Yeah, that's happened. So could that happen?
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see a change like that. But so far, it appears as though we don't have anything in this particular national championship.
Right. And that's followed, I guess this is the stage that's coupled with it,
Right.
stage 13, and it's a 13 round, six paper, one popper, swinger with a white foreground, so white steel in front of it. So that'll be interesting. Where is the start position? Oh, anywhere.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I have a
Yep.
feeling this is going to be if it stays close to this, it's going to be a back left start because you're going to end. I don't know. That's hard to say actually because I didn't see this little wall right here initially. So that's going to make you
So
go wide, but still, it looks like the flow would be better going forward than backward.
yeah, I agree. I think the place to start based on this diagram is in the left back corner,
Yeah.
where you got targets there, a tuxedo and an open. And so then I think the rest of the stage comes down to, do you just go to the middle and then finish on the right front corner, or do you go, because it doesn't look like it's a huge distance to cover. So I do think you
Right.
could option of going middle then right or right then middle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Probably middle then right is technically a little more efficient in terms of movement, but then again, how it lays out, or depending on your particular strengths and weaknesses, might be a determining factor on that as well.
I think it's going to depend on where you can see these two targets back here on the right.
Hmm.
Because if you
Hmm.
can see them from back here in the middle of the shooting area, then
True, true.
it'd be quick. You can engage it there, then just run up front. But if you've
Yeah.
got to go all the way to that corner, then yeah, it might actually be easier going to the middle than step
Yep.
out to the right.
Agreed.
So again, it all comes down to what does it look like on the ground?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So after stage
Stage.
13, we get back to just a stand. I think our next doubled up stages are. Oh, that's right. 14 and 15 are going to be together in the same bay as well. And then I
Okay.
think I saw also. I think we actually have three bays back to. Nope, not quite. There's a 16 that's in between there. So 14 and 15 are back to back in the same bay, and 17 and 18 are back to back. So you got quite a
Okay.
few of these. Now, to be clear, 12 and 13 that we just covered were actually in zone 2B. So you're going to shoot that on a different day than these other four stages that are back to back. But that, again, like I mentioned, I think the reason why we're seeing so many of them later on in the stage numbers is because that's where they finally have the space to do more of this kind of thing.
It looks like you and the super squad will be shooting these the last day.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in squad 205, and I
Yep.
believe 206 would be, so 201 to 206 or 101 to 106 are going to be the squads that are going to shoot zone 1 on day 1
Okay.
and progress through it in that kind of,
So
orderly
yeah,
fashion.
you guys are basically shooting zone 1, then zone 2, then zone 3
Yep.
each day.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Again, yeah, just like the other two, short, quick stage, 12 rounds. Now this time it looks like we have a swinger, but this time it's black steel in front of it, so just hardcover.
It's not
And anywhere.
it's not clear exactly what that is. It actually looks more like a bobber, as
Right.
opposed to
True.
here.
It does look like a bobber. You're right.
Yeah, it just says it's a moving target. Remains visible at rest. Um, but yeah, anywhere in shooting area, as you mentioned.
Yep.
P2, which looks like a mini popper, is the activator, and this stage is more of a front to back linear type movement. And so, I mean, you can start anywhere, but you're probably starting in the back right,
Yeah, I agree. And it looks
using
like
that left
P2,
target.
I've got it highlighted on the screen, but it looks like P2 is just to the left of those double stacked barrels
Mm-hmm,
back by the bobber or whatever it is.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. It looks like you're going to start here. Because you step out of this position and you should be, based on this, it's just going to be engage that as you go,
Yep,
and then
yep. Use it as an
start.
opportunity to take some shots on the move as you move downrange towards the
Yep.
final position. You may be able to even take that back open paper a little bit as you are coming into the
Into
final
position.
position,
Yep.
and then go activator, then the other popper, and then hopefully that makes sense, to then go over to the bobber at that point. Or maybe if that bobber takes forever, maybe you take the left open paper on the move and then race to the end and go activator, popper, paper, bobber. But a couple
Right.
options potentially.
Depends on the timing.
Yep. And again, depending on what your skill permits, as far
Right.
as what you can get done in that amount of time.
Absolutely.
So I'm always I'm always trying to find opportunities to, uh, you got to be smart about it, right? But I do treat activation sequences fairly aggressively, because I mean, there's just so much time that can be taken up if you're standing around waiting on an activation.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Stage 15. The
and
other
by the way,
half of this.
both of these are 12 round stages, so they're pretty quick.
Start anywhere, left to right lateral movement. So this favors your Max Michels, your Nils, your JJs, those guys with that quick, anybody who's got that quick lateral movement. This is definitely going to favor them.
Yep, yep, pretty straightforward. It's
Very
it's
straightforward.
the way it's laid out, the way the targets are broken up with the walls. It's probably one of those um, stages where you're going to shoot as much of it as possible while you're moving laterally, and you're probably skipping targets because, for instance, if I was starting left, um,
Mm-hmm.
some people don't like to draw to partial no shoots. I actually, in some cases, almost prefer it. Maybe almost a similar reason to you talking earlier about drawing to a popper. Um, I have no qualms about drawing to a partial target like that, and frankly, find myself a little bit more at ease. At the same time, if there's something else that makes more sense, I'll do that. But this is one where I might be inclined to draw to that partial no shoot on the left, and then just based on the way these walls look like they present, it's probably one where you're going to shoot it's going to be T3. Um, which is kind of tucked behind the wall because it's probably going to disappear the soonest. Yep, that one
Right.
there. And then from there, probably transition over to T5, and then T4, and then probably T6, and then finishing on T2 would be my guess based on. And I
Yeah,
think that's the intent here is it's going to be kind of broken up a little bit as far as what presents itself first and what disappears soonest. And but I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit of kind of skipping targets as you're having things open and close on you.
I agree. That's exactly the order I would have gone with as well. Just looking at it, because as you move to the right, or as you shoot this, and again, I think for me it's just I have a better grasp of visual patience on my draw. Like if it's a very close open target, then I will, the moment I see red, I'll just start shooting. You know what I mean? But if I'm drawing on steel, if I'm drawing on a partial or a no shoot, I know that I have that visual patience on the draw to get that first round exactly where I want it. And then the second one will be pretty close right there. It's rare for me to then, it's for me, it's usually after the first target that I'm going to do something dumb. So I would
Yeah,
draw. Yep, go ahead.
I agree. I am. To me, the way it works in my mind is it's sort of like, well, the hardest target in this whole stage is that partial no shoot, and I feel sort of freed up to okay, shoot that one. I'm going to take two well aimed shots on it because it's probably the most difficult one on this whole stage. So draw two well aimed shots, and then after that, I just feel freed up to just kind of let it rip. Now, there's a couple of hard to cover um, partials here, but I, that's just kind of how my brain works. When I see something kind of like this, it's harder for me to shoot, say, these other five targets where I'm probably a lot more aggressive, and then suddenly have to put the brakes on for that no
Right.
shoot. It's like, you know what? Shoot the no shoot, get it out of the way, and then just sort of let it rip.
Right. Because these are, I mean, even though these are partials, that's a lot of area that you still have for aiming. It's not like it's a tuxedo, where you've got to be a little bit more cautious when you transition in. So you can still engage those moving and with a lot of speed.
Yeah, on those diagonal partials, I'm still shooting for alphas, but I'm biasing up towards the corner
Right.
of those A zones, right? And I'll accept on a stage like this is 12 rounds. I mean, ideally, I get through this stage with 11 alpha, 1 Charlie. It might be 10 alpha, 2 Charlie. You also got that partial no shoot. So there's a lot of opportunities here to end up with a couple of Charlies. I definitely don't want more than two. I think more than two, you're going to be hard pressed to hang, with the top scores as far as hit factor on this stage. Honestly, you're going to see probably the top hit factors on the stage are going to be all alpha, maybe 11 alpha and 1 Charlie with a very spicy time. But yeah, I'm gonna try to hit all alphas on this stage, but my aiming scheme is going to be biased a little bit to the corners of those A zones on those hard to cover partials. So
Right.
sometimes it is just what it is. Um, but
And and
yeah,
and this and for if this is your first nationals and you see something like this, I would also tend to say that, if or if you haven't shot that many matches, let's just put it that way, you don't have a lot of match experience, hitting that no shoot on a short, quick stage like this is death. So
yeah.
those
I mean,
those those loss of points will kill you on a stage this quick and short.
yeah. Yes. I mean, obviously,
A
in
mic
my
no shoot, or
sport,
an alpha no
yeah.
shoot mic will just obliterate your stage standing.
Any penalty on this stage is going to put you, in the probably 50% range at the very least on a stage like this. That's again, this is probably with the partials on this one, this is probably an 8.5 second stage, so not a lot of time here. and not a lot of points. And so as soon as either
Right.
one of those goes out the window, you're pretty hosed. But um, yeah, I think that shot calling is going to be super key on this. Again, that's the other reason I think I like shooting the no shoot partial first on this particular stage from a strategy standpoint. Um, two well placed shots, and then everything else I could shoot probably very aggressively, but with good shot calling in order. Meaning that I'm going to shoot those hardcover partials aggressively as well as everything else that's open, but making sure I'm really paying close attention to what my gun's doing, where those shots are called. And then I'm just going to, I mean, it's a 12 round stage and I can have a fully loaded gun. So I got plenty of shots. I can, shoot a couple of makeups should
Yep.
I need them. I don't want them, but I want to shoot the stage aggressively as aggressively as possible, but while still collecting good points. And so shot calling, as always, is the case. But especially on one like this, shot calling is going to be super important so you don't leave something in the black and have a mic or end up, with 4 Charlie or something.
Right. All right. Stage 16 is all by itself. And this looks like a big stage, 26 rounds, anywhere in the shooting area, but you have a stomp pad in the middle.
Yep, outside of the shooting area.
Yeah.
And it doesn't state in our procedure here if that's considered shooting area. I suspect it's not. That's usually what we do, is say that that's not shooting area.
Right.
So it'll be one of those things that as you come to that position, some people might be inclined to start there in the middle. I suspect. I mean, again, we'll see how it actually lays out, but I suspect being on the left or being on the right is probably the play here, and that you're going to want to just reach out and tap that thing and get back in the shooting area to engage. It does look like the angles are going to be such that you can probably see the bobber from quite a wide section of the stage there, but you got two targets in that middle section that are tucked away on the left and on the right, that are probably shot either towards the beginning of your stage run or later in the stage run, where the middle portion is primarily you
Just
know
the
going to
bobber.
be bobber,
Yep.
would be my guess. So
Agree. Because it looks like the target on the right is going to be pretty close to the left starting position, and then the target on the left is closer to the right starting position. So yeah, it looks like there's a lot of opportunity for movement. It looks like the targets are the same number on each side, on each half. The
yep,
difference is, the far right, you've got the no shoot versus the partial on the left. And then you've got the two targets on the right half side by side, shoulder to shoulder, whereas on the left half, you've got them stacked with a no shoot in between. So they've done a few things to change it up a little bit, but otherwise, the two halves look identical.
yep,
And there's
yep,
definitely a reload in here somewhere, probably right in the middle, I'm
yeah.
guessing.
Well, again, I think the middle section is going to be where you have most of your movement, where you're just trying to cover ground and not doing a lot of shooting. And so, somewhere as you're coming through the middle section, you're likely executing a reload, and perhaps part of that same movement with reload is when you're also hitting the stomp pad. Honestly, to me, it kind of almost looks like I could see this stage going either way. But if I was starting in the front left corner there, shooting that first array, the next stacked target, kind of in a tighter, alleyway there, is probably engaged also, kind of more or less part as part of that first array, or trying to blend those first two positions as much as possible, and
Right.
then executing a reload as you move towards the right side of the stage while hitting the stomp pad, because
Mm,
you're already kind of forward, and I could come back across as I reload and hit the stomp pad. And again, the bobber looks like it's probably visible from, like, if you're standing in front of it'd be what, T1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, T8 and T9, which are kind of down another little hallway of sorts.
yep.
Um, I suspect you can probably shoot those, or at least one of those, while also seeing and shooting the bobber. And so really the stomp pad is just something that's in the middle of the shooting area that you're already probably running through, even if you're going right to left or left to right.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, it'll be interesting. That's just
Yeah.
kind of like they threw a widget right in the middle of the stage.
Yep.
So,
And it's the only, as far as I recall, the only activation that's not a popper activation. So
right,
got to
an
have
actual
something like that
manual
somewhere.
activator. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And that's cool. And again,
Yep.
it's entirely possible you have, and I do think it is probably a viable stage plan to start more or less next to that stomp pad and start running across to either the left or right, depending on your preference, while stepping on that stomp pad and completing your draw. And that also is probably a viable option based on what we're seeing here.
Right. Yep. It'll be interesting when people get there and actually start walking the stage. Or I always like to get there a little bit early on that Thursday where I can watch the staff shoot some of these stages, especially like that one. I would go and watch. Just give me ideas so that then when I walk the stage, I can kind of play around with it a little bit.
Yeah. Agreed. And it isn't wonderful in USPSA that we're able to do that in the first place.
Yes.
I have an appreciation for IPSC style competition as well, and the the whole concept of it really truly is equal when everybody only gets to really see a stage for a couple of minutes as part of their initial stage description and walkthrough, and then you're off and shooting. Now, granted, IPSC usually is not as complex of stages as far as adding some of the trickier target positionings and things like that. But I think it's great that we can do that. That we can, really have, there's no limit to the amount of creativity that we can design into USPSA style stages, and then that level of creativity also means that there's a lot of preparation that can and should go into our stage planning on such things. And I appreciate that we can walk them and get a feel for things ahead of time.
Agree. Me
Absolutely.
too. That is a benefit, and that's one of the bigger things that separates the two. I think the two big ones are the fact that in IPSC you can't go outside of the stage boundary, the
Yep.
shooting boundary, and then ability to walk. But I think that with IPSC, unless you're that very high level shooter, you're leaving you're leaving things on the table. Like if I were to go shoot IPSC World Shoot and all I have is the 3 or 4 minutes to look at it, well, I'm not at that point in my career where I can go, oh, I know exactly how to shoot this. I know how to game it as best you can in IPSC. Whereas at least here, I'm like, I can take a full day and go, now I've got it ironed out, and I know that if I execute, I will do well.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about it, just the nature that IPSC, uh, you know, basically requires you to shoot everything while remaining in the shooting area. That by nature of that requirement is partly what keeps the stage designs more or less straightforward compared to what we can get away with in USPSA. And so, yeah, I'm looking. By the way, I'm shooting IPSC Nationals later this year. For the first time, and at least that's the plan. And so I'm looking forward to experiencing that test for the first time because I have yet to
Right.
shoot a true IPSC rule set in a match. But I have an appreciation for it. I look forward to experiencing it for the first time later this year. But hey, this is USPSA Carry Optics Nationals, and so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing
Yeah,
conceptually with these stage designs. I think it has a lot of potential to be a great match and great stages. Um, so it'll be a good time. Now we got stage 17 and 18, which again these are our final two that are back to back on a single bay. One of them is Virginia Count at stage 17 that we see here on the screen, 16
yep,
rounds. This is one we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
stating it's kind of like that 22 series classifier where you shoot two targets each with 4 rounds and then perform a mandatory reload and then shoot 4 rounds again on each of 2 remaining targets. But in this case, after the reload, you got strong hand only shooting. And instead of a no shoot in the middle stack of targets, we have a left side target with left hard cover, or right side, and these are all IPSC, by the way. That's the other major difference. And a right side IPSC with right side hard cover, and then the stack in the middle. The lower IPSC, it's just 2 IPSC targets, but the upper portion of the front one is hard cover.
Hardcover.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting test. With and depending on exactly, how much. I mean, it looks like that lower middle target is pretty generous in terms of A zone availability. Uh, and so that may very well likely be one that I want to reserve for strong hand only shooting, along with one of the side targets. Or the other approach might be to shoot off 8 rounds of the first portion of this on the middle array and then save the left and right side targets for your strong hand only portion of this. I appreciate that there's some different approaches you could take to this based on your level of comfort of strong hand only shooting. For me personally, I don't want to shoot the upper middle target strong hand only. Just me personally, it's not quite as forgiving the way that's set up for my particular taste.
Now,
I,
let me ask you this. Is there a way we could be, because I read this as it's strong hand only for all 4 targets.
oh, maybe I misread that. Oh, it doesn't say freestyle, does it?
No, nowhere.
Oh, you know what? Good catch.
So I
So
think that
all
might be strong hand only, period.
oh
Now
yeah,
I
yeah,
could be wrong too, but that would be one of the things I checked when I got there. I was like, oh, okay, is it
yeah.
all strong hand?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. This I could see this going both ways. I could see it
Yes.
being where on this abbreviated version of the stage description, they just left out a word,
Right.
meaning freestyle.
Correct.
So that'll definitely be something on stage 17. You'll want to see what the actual written stage briefing says, if there's any freestyle at all, or as it indicates here, everything is done, and then it says comma strong hand only. I don't know. Good
Yeah.
catch there. That could be. And you
Yep.
know what? That would be kind of interesting. So
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that would.
shoot it off.
I mean, that's a lot of opportunities for mics that would definitely change the complexion of things.
Yeah, on a Virginia count, if all 16 shots are strong hand only, yeah, you will definitely see a fairly high percentage of shooters that will have at least one, if not two, mics.
For sure. Especially like you said, maybe not those other 3 targets, but that top target, either over because you're trying to aim a little high to not hit the hardcover, or, like over the shoulders, or into the black of that hardcover.
Yeah. If this is a freestyle first half of the string and then reload to strong hand only, my personal preference would be I would shoot the middle lower target and then the right target, because as a righty, the right target is the most forgiving between the other remaining targets. But if
So
it's all
that,
strong hand only, it'll be a good test.
yeah, for sure. So 18 is the other half of that bay. And this is the one I was talking about. You could slap a part time on this one,
True.
and it would be very interesting, especially like you have like a mini accelerator on the left side
Yep.
and then a gaggle on the right.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely potential for fixed power time. Um, Not saying that's what this is. There's no indication of that, but well, it says scoring Comstock, obviously, but again,
Right.
that can change. But and this is one of the, I think there's 2 stages that have wrist above shoulder start, and then the other unconventional start is hands on mark, which was like stage 2 or 4 or something like that. But
Right. It was
um,
early.
and yeah, mandatory reload as you're in between transitioning between either the left side or right side array. Yep. And
Now, here's
this
something I
one,
didn't catch earlier,
okay.
but it says standing completely outside the shooting area, straddling the start stick, but your heels are touching the rear fault line, meaning you're facing uprange, not downrange. So this is a turn and
Mm,
shoot.
yeah,
I
good
thought it
catch.
was facing downrange, but it's you would actually have to be facing uprange.
Yeah, I did not mark that
Ah,
heels portion. That's a good catch as well.
yeah. I
Um,
just caught it.
and it doesn't say, granted, it would typically be in the written stage briefing where it would specify the level
Facing
of
uprange.
specifics of, like, yeah, if you have to be
Yeah.
facing, or if, can I really bias my feet and, still have my heels touching, and I can have my body already partially turned. Who knows?
Right.
But watch this stage, folks, because this is one where people get in trouble with DQ because they're coming out of the holster too quick.
Yeah.
and
Straightforward, but yeah.
especially because of that start stick location being outside the shooting area, and that's why I'm pointing that out now, that that could be a high probability for DQ liability if you're not careful, because
Yeah,
it's a little
and
bit
this is
different.
not this is definitely one I would now this is something that I would practice before I got there because you this is not a turn and draw. This is a turn step and draw. Because you
Exactly.
got to step into the shooting area and not you're not in it. So
Yep. and
there's
that
a
and
lot
that's
going on.
and that's where that DQ potential, or the chance
Yeah.
of that goes up significantly. So I would, if it were me, and if we're reading this correctly, I would not begin pulling my gun from holster until I have already got at least 1 foot planted fully in that shooting area.
This is like 2 years ago at CMP, that one stage where you started in the middle, hands on the wall, and you had to run back to the left, and people were drawing their guns too soon and getting
Yep.
disqualified.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So watch this one. Good catch on that. Stage 19. This is our other 32 round count stage. This looks to be probably the largest stage in terms of shooting area of the
This
whole
is
match.
ginormous.
Yeah. I mean, when we're just looking at walls and assuming these are all 8 foot walls, I mean, that starts giving you a sense of the scale of the
Yeah.
shooting area. It's massive. It doesn't appear now. I don't know for sure exactly how deep these new bays
Bays
are.
are
Bays,
right.
but looking at the scale of this thing, there could be most of the shooting bay taken up just by the length of this shooting
And
area.
width, yeah.
So the actual, I suspect on this particular stage, that the shooting challenge may not be as much of a distance thing as far as distance to target, but just that it's a massive stage with a lot of movement, a lot of positions, a lot of different, kind of broken up target arrays. And so a lot of opportunity for missteps and inefficiencies if you're not careful with how you execute this movement wise.
And the start is right back here in the middle on the straddling the start stick. So now it's like, okay, I almost feel like this is one of those where you run just far enough to the left to see this target and then start headed to the right. And there's going to be some wide transitions in here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting.
there appears to be some opportunity to engage a few things on the move, but again, some of it,
Yes.
it's just really broken up and rather choppy. So really,
Yeah.
being efficient on entries and exits of positions, uh, making sure you have the gun up ready to shoot as you're going into positions, all that's going to be super critical. Because as I'm looking at it, there is at least one, two, three, four, five, six, maybe as many as seven different shooting positions. How
Yeah.
much of that you can do on the move? That's a good question. How much of that you can blend? There's definitely some opportunity there as well. But there's at least, I think there's at least seven shooting positions here. So that really gives you a sense of. I mean, this is a stage that's going to be up in the 20 plus second range, just because of the sheer amount movement that you and probably most competitors are going to be closer to 30 seconds just because of the size of this and all of the stopping and moving.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because, like you're saying, I mean, there are a bunch of targets that, like, you're going to have to go deep into this up front to get that. You've got to go all the way up front to get that one.
Yep.
You know, you're going to have to come somewhere all the way over here to. So yeah, there's a lot of. They're going to make you go a lot of places.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. This will be this is a high. I mean, so how important this is, if you care about doing well at this match, is that this is a high point stage, right? I mean, this is max. It's 160 points, um, and there's a lot of opportunity to separate the top performers from the not as top performers, just based on inefficiencies of
Right.
position entries and exits and movement on this stage. So that's yeah. This is a good kick in the pants for me. When I saw this stage, I was like, oh man, like movement's been a big focus of mine for the last little while now, and trying, and especially with positional entry and exit, just trying to get better and more efficient at that kind of stuff. And this is one that's going to kick your butt if you're not up to snuff on that.
Absolutely. Stage 20. Another
This
big stage, 30 rounds.
It is, and this is the other
But
stage that is a table start, or in this case, looks like a barrel.
yes.
And really, what you have is three different shooting areas that are boxes. They're probably 8 by 8 foot boxes. Um, the boxes look to be about the length of an 8 foot.
Agree. Yeah, if
Because
it's proportioned correctly.
it matches the scale of the wall lengths.
Yeah.
So you basically got 8 by 8 foot boxes, three of them, but you're starting in the middle one, and it's kind of already halfway down the stage. So that's kind of an interesting thing here. So you got to retreat no matter what you do.
Yes. And I find that interesting because yes, you're starting in the middle. The handgun is loaded. They're not making you leave your mags on the barrel, but again, wide transitions. You're
Yeah.
gonna because look at it, look on the screen, you've got this little mini popper way over here to the right,
Yep.
and you've got this target way over here to the left at exactly 9 o'clock. And the only place you're going to get those, more than likely, is that middle section. That's like 120, 140 degree transition.
Maybe 150. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. This is a really interesting stage to see on the heels of the one we just talked about, which is a massive stage where the movement piece and position, entry, exit, and all that is a huge emphasis.
Right.
This one, so much of the emphasis is on transitions and particularly wide transitions. I agree. I picked up on
Yeah.
that, and noticed that what you have is, a whole bunch of targets set out there. Because again, this is a 30 round stage. So
Yeah.
almost, 32 rounds, 150 points here. You have a lot of targets, and every one of these boxes, you are going to have
Wide.
hard left and hard right transitions at some point during the engagement here. And now there's going to be some options, it appears, where some of these you can hit from multiple boxes.
Right.
I mean, there's going to be some of these targets that you must only hit from certain boxes, and you're going to have some that are options where you clearly have some targets that are downrange, that are more or less straight ahead of the general shooting areas, where it's sort of like, well, when do I want to maybe, do I want to optionally engage some of these further, directly downrange targets, maybe further back, or do I want to get a little bit closer? And that may play into just some of your general strategy with respect to when am I going to reload, how am I going to reload, and in what order am I going to engage certain things in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I think
transitions are going
from
to be huge.
if this were to stay loyal to the diagram, I think I would retreat and then go forward. But that just because, again, based on my strengths, I just feel like I could much easier, I could initially start shooting, run back, shoot, and then reload as I'm going forward. So by the time I reach the box, I'm ready to go.
Mhm.
But just try, I mean, this is another 150-degree transition,
Yep.
and you can only do it from back here. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yep.
Oof.
Yeah.
What'll be the most interesting to me watching like the Super Squad is how many of these targets, as you said it, from right here, that starting box, are they going to hit that popper? Are they going? Is that going to be visible? Like, how many of these targets are they going to take from back here?
Yep. I think
It'll
it's
be
pretty
interesting.
clear that the two, there's a popper and a mini popper that are, to the left there next to each other.
Yeah,
It's pretty
can
clear that
only.
those are going to be from that middle box, right?
Yeah, I almost feel like that paper is going to be from that box too.
Well, it probably
Because
makes most sense, I think, to shoot it from there. I don't know that
yeah,
you can reach it from that other box in the front left. Um, but
right.
yeah,
But what do you do with this guy? Because it'll be visible, but you have to move up and shoot this one anyway,
right.
or these
Yeah,
two. So maybe you
yeah.
just leave it. It'll be interesting.
I think this stage, I'm not seeing anything in this match that is, a true memory type stage. But I think this stage here is kind of the closest thing to that, where this is probably the one stage that has the greatest risk in terms of failure to shoot at penalties, because there's just so much going on from all these three different shooting
Yeah.
areas that it's probably easy to overlook something if you're not really dialed into your stage plan and having it memorized properly.
Or even shoot a target twice.
Twice, yeah. Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I almost feel like I would just start shooting right to left in a
Mhm.
big arc and then run back, shoot, and then run forward. You know what I mean? So I would hope that I wouldn't shoot something twice, but I
Yep.
mean this target can be seen from both of these boxes. So
Yep.
man,
And
yeah,
this is
there's a
another
lot of opportunity
Yeah, this is another
for
stage, kind of like
mistakes.
that last one, that the times are going to be fairly high. 20 plus seconds for sure, maybe even more like 25 plus seconds on this stage. And so, when you're considering that, we're these last couple stages we're looking at are probably relatively low hit factor. Um, so points are going to really be critical.
Agree. And that brings us to the last one. It's number 21, a
Another
25
another big
round
one.
stage. Whoa. And it's a front start.
Yeah.
So,
And out of these last three monster stages, this one is probably, well, that last 120 probably has a few fairly long shots. This one here, I think, will probably have the longest shots out of the last three that we reviewed. So, yeah, front start position, like you noted, in a large stage area, a shooting area you got to cover, including this, like, as you note, there's this diagonal shooting area with a diagonal wall. So at
yeah.
some point, everybody's got to come back to the very back of the stage and work
Yep.
their way up that diagonal. Almost certainly, obviously, that's where everybody's going to end up, is that front right area in the corner.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see like the timing of this bobber with this popper over here,
Yep.
the
It's the
order
one
with which people
stage.
shoot. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that popper's kind of hiding back, tucked behind some barrels there.
Yep.
Obviously, you're probably only able to see it from that, basically near that starting position, maybe slightly to the right of the start stick. So yeah, making the hit count on that popper, and then what else can I engage during that time?
Yeah.
There's not a ton of options that don't require a fairly wide transition, either to the bobber itself, or because, like, I see basically popper activation and then an open IPSC to the left of it, but then you got a wide transition over to the bobber, or you go popper activation, wide transition to the back open IPSC to the right of the bobber, and then bobber.
Yep.
So either way, you got a wide transition in the front there if you're trying to do some work while activating the bobber itself. Another stage it's kind of broken up as far as you got targets all over the place, including targets that are optional. You know, based on you have multiple options that a couple targets you could engage from different positions. So how you want to work that into your plan and strategy. Um, yeah, I think once you get to the rear most portion of the stage from there, this becomes a lot more straightforward where you're basically marching your way forward and to the right with a
Yep.
couple of target arrays. But the first half of this stage has got some options and uh, some decisions will have to be made.
I think from that very back position, once you shoot this target on the back left and then turn, everything's going to be moving forward until you
Yep.
hit this position. You know, everything's going to be, for those high level guys, they're going to be shooting this on the move. They'll shoot this one on the move coming down. And as they're coming into position, they'll start shooting these two and finish on that guy right there.
Yeah, it seems likely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Assuming that, again, it looks the same on the ground as it does
Yeah. Yeah.
on paper, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's
it's
become.
going to be interesting.
Yep. That's the disclaimer of the podcast here is we'll see what it looks like on the ground. So some people probably be like, well, what's the point of doing this preview when, we can't know exactly what we're going to be faced with until we get there. But I think part of this is, what we're seeing is, and I expect this of a national level match where like what are the type of shooting tests we're going to be faced with, and I expect to see that for the most part most everything gets tested in some fashion as far as single-handed shooting, maybe unconventional start positions. We're testing wide transitions, narrow transitions, lots of movement of different types, shooting on the move, um, strategy stuff, stage planning, decision making, how good and how smart you are with that stuff. This is a match. I mean, there maybe is based on what we've seen. There may be a few things that are missing as far as we've touched on. So far, we don't see anything described as requiring mags to be picked up and stowed. Not seeing on these diagrams any low shooting positions. We're not seeing Cooper tunnels. We're not seeing any doors that have to be opened. Things of that
Right.
nature. But this definitely kind of sets the stage of okay, are wide transitions a weakness for you? Well, you probably want to spend the next your last remaining time here, based on stage 20 and stage 21 especially, working on some wide transition work. Is movement something that you need to work on because you're going to have some stages here where that is super important, and position entries and exits super important. I think so far we've touched on this a few times. Shooting on the move is probably a good thing to practice and work on, and looking at once you get to the match, seeing where you can utilize that because there's definitely I think some opportunities that can separate the high performers from the not so high performers, and so there's a lot of good things going for this match based on the stages we just reviewed, and it certainly has given me some food for thought as far as where I want to spend a little bit of my emphasis in my last remaining practice sessions. I'll tell you one thing for sure, and I kind of anticipated this, but I am for sure going to dedicate some serious practice time to single-hand shooting,
Mm.
especially a little bit more now than maybe than I was intending on the strong hand only. Because if I have that whole stage, in fact, I'm probably my next practice session, I'm going to probably set up as best as I can something that looks like that stage 17 and practice that
Oh, yeah.
all strong hand only, just in case that is in fact the way it's going to be run, which it appears as though that is the case. And then of course some weak hand only stuff as well, although we really only have the one stage where I think that's a factor. But yeah, it paints the picture of what I'm going to spend my time doing the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing about going through it like this is pointing those things out. You know, even that one stage we looked at where it's a turn step into the shooting area and then draw,
Yeah.
making sure you're comfortable with that and familiar with how you're going to do it.
Yep. Yeah. That'd be spot on. I think that'll be another thing that I'll, at the very least, set up in dry fire and
Yeah.
make sure that I've got that down, because I don't think I've ever shot a stage with a start position quite like that. Certainly, plenty of those where you're facing up range, but you're already in the shooting area, right? So it's just a pure
Yeah.
turn,
Turn.
um, and so that's an interesting little mix.
It really is. And like you said, I mean, that is definitely an opportunity for disqualification. So, that's one of those where, you know what, if you take an extra half a second being safe, it's well worth it. So,
Yeah, that's not. I mean, we're based on that start position, even with the top shooters. Uh, that's probably one where the first shot's not happening until 1.5, 1.8 seconds, maybe. Um, I
oh,
mean, I don't think you're going to see Mason Lane trying to throw down a 1.2 turn and step in and draw on the first target on that stage.
and that makes me wonder too. So, for those guys, I wonder what's going through their head because they're so used to shooting at a certain pace and all of that. Is it going to be in their mind as they're shooting like, wow, I feel like I'm way behind. You know what I mean? Like, because
Hmm.
that would creep into my head like, man, that was slow. And it would tempt me to try to shoot faster, which I would try to do and then fail. But,
Yep.
it'd be interesting how all of this affects their mental portion of the game.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, and that's true for all of us, honestly. Um, One of the things that stood out to me as I was glancing at my papers here that I just stacked up neatly. Stage one, back to stage one. The one stage, the whole match that's unloaded start. So again, that's why I think it's good to do this kind of match preview,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to spend a lot of time working on my unloaded start. I'll do a little bit of dry work, because it's unloaded and it's on table. Okay.
Right. Not hard.
Um, yeah. So I'll spend maybe 10 minutes in, maybe the week before the match, just to, all right, yep, cool, got it. I've done it before. Um, yeah, but I'm not seeing, we've seen some matches where you've got almost one unloaded start per zone,
Right.
and we're just not seeing that here. So that's one thing at this point, I'm like, nope, not gonna worry about spending a lot of time on unloaded start practice. And you see that it's kind of the Instagram trend, right? Guys like, oh, look how I can, unload start, get first round off on a 20-yard popper in, point 0.9. It's like, that's cool, bro, but not relevant to this match, I would say.
Right. Yeah. And right or wrong, I don't even know, to be honest with you. I'm pretty comfortable with those kind of starts. So I would probably just the night before, because I'll do like a half hour dry fire each night in between the days. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where I would do it. Is like, oh, that's tomorrow. Here, I'll do 5 minutes of just, this is how I'm going to grab it and just practice that initial grab and move. So I've got that down, and then that would be it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, makes sense. That will be one that I'm shooting on my first day. I think it'll be my second to last. No, that's not true. It'll be like my third stage, I think, that I shoot. Um,
Right.
so that'll be something that I probably, touch up on, like you said, probably the night before for, 10 reps or something, just make
Yeah.
sure that I'm not, you know, stupid about it. So I'm not too worried about it from that perspective. So that's the whole point. Like I said, is this gives us a sense of where to focus our efforts and where not to in the next couple of weeks. I kind of wish we got the matchbook a little bit sooner. I'm of the opinion with especially national level matches, national championships. I really think that we should have matchbooks at least 4 weeks
About a,
in advance of,
yeah.
of the
As I say, about
match.
a month out is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
preferably, honestly, because a lot of guys start ramping up practice even before that. I mean, honestly, 6 weeks beforehand would be great, but we got this basically 3 weeks out. So, yeah, at least we got it, I guess.
Yeah, and you could even say less than that because they put it out right as an area match is starting. So who's, you know what I mean?
That's true.
There's going to be a lot of guys who are shooting the area matches that, they're not going to
Yeah.
start on this till this coming week or whatever. So, and that's not an insult or, I'm not trying to complain. It's just, it is what it is.
I know it's a lot of work, to put together national championship matches and
Yep.
to put together all the stages and to try to test all these different skills like we touched on here today. And I'm appreciative of the work that goes into it. And you're correct. I think we got Area 5 going on this weekend right now
Yeah.
as we're recording this.
Yep.
Area 4 is next week, which I'm shooting actually on staff day because I'm teaching a class that same weekend. It's nice that it's just 2 hours away from where I'm teaching in Temple, Texas next weekend. And so I'm going in a little bit early and shooting. I thought about shooting it on Friday. I'm teaching the Saturday, Sunday. Excuse me. Thought about shooting the Area 4 on Friday, but I kind of thought maybe that's not the smartest thing when I gotta be on my feet teaching for 2 days. So
Right.
I'm gonna shoot it on Thursday, which means I will not have advance looks at the stages. I'll get there and shoot it just like the staff will.
There you go. There's your IPSC match.
Should be a good time though. And I've had matches where that's gone really well when I've not overthought the stages. But there's always that risk that there's that one or two stages that's really complex or requires a little bit more thinking as far as like decision making. And then there, of course, there's that risk that you happen to land on a fairly complicated stage and you're the first person to go. So,
Right.
it just is what it is. Do the best that I can at Area 4. I'm glad I get that opportunity and get to use it a little bit as a major match preparation for nationals. It's 2 weeks later. So
Yeah. And the last thing I just threw up real quick, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but they are doing the Bill Drill Challenge again. But the difference is $20 gets you the 2 attempts like last year. Cash prizes again. But whoever wins that initial wins, quote unquote, wins, it's actually the qualifier. Then you go up against Isaac.
yep,
So it'll be interesting. And like you said, Colt is actually going to match whatever that cash prize is. So that's cool.
it really is. And it says they're also awarding cash prizes based. Well, it says by division. I think they mean by class, because we're all shooting carry
It's
optics.
all one division. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's just a misprint there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this come back. And obviously, everyone knows Isaac by reputation now. As far as he's the current Bill Drill king, throwing down that
He is.
1.23 second run last year, which Isaac's a good buddy of mine, and in fact we're rooming together for nationals as we've
Oh.
done the last couple of years. And I was right there as I watched him. If you saw the footage of him with that 1.23 run, I was the cameraman. So
Oh,
I got
okay. Yeah, I did see it.
yeah, I got to see that firsthand, and it was pretty exciting to see. There was a lot of great heat last year, even, and I think there's going to be even more heat this year because people are going to be a little bit more prepared for it, and people are going to want to knock Isaac off of that pedestal. I'm sure. I'll take some stabs at it. I'm pretty confident I cannot uh, do as well as Isaac can. But here's what I like about this year's twist. And I was talking to Isaac just a day or two ago, and my understanding is he's not participating in the qualifying portion of this. He's just shooting in the final because he mentioned to me he's like, I got 6 attempts because that's what the final is the final will be 2 shooters, 6 attempts each. And as they progress through that, I think I don't know if it's going to be like a coin flip or how it's going to be, or maybe it's just the challenger is going to get to go first. But at some point, maybe it's your first attempt, maybe it's your second attempt, maybe it's your third attempt. You can say, you know what, I'm gonna hold right there, Isaac. Now you do one
Oh,
better, and then he's got
okay.
6 attempts to beat that. Now, my understanding is you have 6 attempts, period. So if it takes him 2 attempts to beat the time you set on your 3rd attempt,
Game
then
over.
he can say, okay, I got you beat. You've got 3 more attempts to now beat me. Like it basically can go back and forth until you're out of attempts, and whoever has the overall fastest run that's clean will be crowned the champion of that, and we'll probably get a really nice cash prize, because if it's anything like last year, Isaac walked away with he was the big winner of 2022 Carry Optics Nationals in terms of cash.
Yes, he was. Nils might have won a trophy, but Isaac walked home with a pocket full of cash.
Yeah, and a pretty good, it was
a chunk.
I think it was like $3,000 or there.
Yeah.
So I suspect this go is going to be even more, because it's going to be matched by Colt. So I was lucky enough to win Masterclass last year, and whether it's sad to say or not, I don't know. I'm still Masterclass, so I'm going to do my best to win Masterclass again, because I don't think I'm going to be classing up before Nationals here. So we'll do my best to hold my Masterclass title, if you will.
There you go. At least for one more year.
Yeah, right.
Well, thanks for coming on, Riley. It was a good talk. We talked about a lot of, I think, a lot of nuances that need to be considered going into the walkthrough. So,
absolutely. And my understanding is that you're still not in the match, but
I am not.
I hope that you are able to get in. I think today, based on the email I received from Jake Martins yesterday or the day before, that he said that by midnight tonight, and this is June 3rd, Saturday, is the last day to withdraw and get any kind of refund. So, my hope is, for your sake, David, is that I'd be watching your email today. If you're on the wait list, maybe you'll be able to get in, because there'll be enough people that drop out, and maybe you should still show up in the match, because I think, and this is true, I think, of anybody listening, if you really want to shoot Carry Optics Nationals, now maybe you're not in a position to be able to get away with this, but I think if you show up with cash in hand on Thursday, June 22nd, and say, hey, is there any last minute dropouts, and can I still squeeze into the match? I think there's a pretty good chance you can do that. And I know people have done that in years past for national championships. So I hope to see you there, David.
Yeah, no guarantees. That's all I can say. I actually did just have meniscus repair like a little over 2 weeks ago. So at this point, if it were tomorrow, I wouldn't be doing it for sure.
Gotcha.
So I don't know what it's even going to be like in 2 weeks from now. So
well, good luck
or 3
on your healing and recovery.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on. It was fun. We'll have to do this more frequently.
Absolutely, brother.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.